Be cool, be kind, be classy. The cupcakes are sweet and sexy. Have fun and enjoy the journey. Just have a good attorney. No big whoop, no biggie. She lives near New York City. Not just a YouTube show. When you know, you better grab a straw. Learn about the law. It's cool here in the shade, sipping motions of lemonade. Cool heads will prevail, kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Oh, Melanie Little is going live. Oh no, where is Melanie? Follow the island's melody. Is a concert within reach. No surprise, she's at Jones Beach. She heard some music far away. Captain Jack Stack Harbor Bay. He sings and his piano plays. Not all sounds are waterways. Speaking Yiddish and Latin, it's not just for Manhattan. It's for Goethe and Machegas. Ridiculous that insanus. Oy vey, Marcus. Proset, that's for schmucks. Be cool, be kind, be classy. My cupcakes sweet and sassy. Not just a YouTube show. When you know. Cool heads will prevail. Kindness will never fail. Be classy and vastly wise. Melanie Little is going live.
Hello, good morning. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday, everyone. Today is Sunday, December 8th. And I am feeling the pressure to start decorating my house. And I feel like I just sort of took my decorations down. Does anybody else feel that way? Like the older you get, the shorter time goes, or the faster time flies. And I feel like I literally just took my Christmas decorations down and now it's time. It's time. I don't know what to think about that. I feel like time is just going by so quickly. And here we are still in the twilight zone of the Karen Reed trial. So funny. I just want to remind everyone this morning that I am not a cupcake. There's a sign over here somewhere that says it. It's pink. It says, you can't make everyone happy. You are not a cupcake. I am the mother of 5 children, and I've had that sign since I became probably at least a mother of 2. Remind myself every morning that I cannot make everyone happy. I am not a cupcake, but you're my cupcakes because you make me happy. And I think I make most of you happy too, unless you're hate watching, in which case, please smash the like button before I really annoy you and you leave because, engagement and whatnot. There's that. So I had somebody in my comments this morning saying, why didn't you tell us about the Gretchen Voss decision? I had to go find it somewhere else. Okay. And then I had another person in my comments saying, can you just stop reading court documents? Okay, well, that's what we do here. Just so you know, if you're new, this is a legal-based channel. I'm Melanie Little. I've been an attorney, a licensed attorney in New York State and federal courts for over 30 years. And I am here to tell you about the law and to explain the law to you and explain the pleadings to you and explain the proceedings to you and dissect testimony with you and witnesses and go over and watch trials together and analyze strategy and performance and reliability of witnesses and veracity of witnesses. And I'm not a neutral channel. I am not a neutral channel. I'm going to tell you that right now. My opinions shift with the wind, and it's not bias, because bias is something that you have when you don't know any of the facts. My opinions on each case are going to shift based on my analysis, my research, my reading of the investigative reports, depositions if we can get them, legal pleadings, testimony, and such other things. There are plenty of neutral channels out there on the Law Tube or the tubes of law, and you are free if you wish to go watch those. But I am not going to hold my opinions, and just give you the both sides and like this is what I do. I have a hard time not saying my opinions, and so I'm not going to do it for this channel. But if you don't like it, many of you like it, many of you don't, and we have different opinions on many cases. But what I do insist on is that everyone here is kind to each other and respectfully disagrees. And if you get timed out or sent to Block Island, it's because you're just being mean. And there's enough vitriol in the world that we just I don't need it on my channel. I mean, if you want to be a drama channel or, go to drama channels, there are places for that. And we just try and stay away from it here. Although today might be a little bit different because today there's too much drama to ignore here because somebody who made a podcast seems to think that is what the Karen Reed case is all about. It's bizarre. I first of all, this is going to be like a stream of consciousness stream today because I have so many thoughts that I've tried for days and days, for like a week, to like write them all down, to put my points together. And every time I read something new, it sends me off in another rabbit hole. That's why sometimes I have Alice up there, because you can call me Alice, because I just fall into these rabbit holes. And it's, yeah, D'Artagnan, that's great. I agree with you very, very much. And I think that's very funny, but I'm going to delete that because of the AI algorithm on YouTube. The curse words are not something that I use here. And that's no shade to anybody who chooses to use them on their channel. But I have so many viewers who have children and like to watch my show with their kids in the room. And so many viewers who say, this is the only channel that my 95-year-old mom can listen to true crime without, every other word being a curse word. And thank you so much. And I listen to you at work and I don't have to put my headphones on. And so we try and keep it clean or clean-ish here, unless it's, Will and Melanie After Dark. And that's usually over on the Glares channel, which I think we may do tonight. I will let you know. In any event, thank you, first of all, to Justin for thanking me this morning and sending a Cash App, and also Mandolin Wind, who says, happy decorating, and thanks for always being there, and prayers up for our subways, because I guess today's Sunday, so it was Friday, we were on verdict watch all day for Daniel Penny. And in fact, an amazing creator, Josh Ritter, joined me for the afternoon stream when that craziness was going on in the Daniel Penny case. And it was so great to have him with me, because not only is he a former prosecutor, he was a former prosecutor under, wait for it, drum roll, Alan Jackson in LA. He was Alan Jackson's law clerk when Alan Jackson prosecuted Phil Spector. And that was like a cool, fun connection that I found out in the green room before we even did that show on Friday afternoon. And if you didn't see it or you're not following it, what happened on Friday was wild. So I'm just gonna briefly tell you about it, because it does have some parallels to the Karen Reed case. So Daniel Penny, a very, very quick summary, is a 20-something, early 20s Marine who was on an uptown F train, a subway car, when a homeless man with a very long rap sheet, schizophrenia, and who was on unknown amounts of a synthetic drug called K2, burst onto the subway car, threatening to kill people and saying he didn't care if he went to jail that day. He didn't care if he went to Rikers. And the train was very crowded, standing room only, women, moms with strollers, and people who were fearing for their lives. And Daniel Penny stepped up when a lot of people wouldn't. A lot of people just film. They don't step up. Put this man in a maybe a rear naked chokehold, a restraining hold of some sort, held him down until the train was able to reach the next station, because when you're on a subway car, there's just nowhere to go when it's moving. And he held him down until the train stopped. It took a little while for the first responders to get there. He let go. First responders found a pulse. The man was still alive when he left. They took Daniel Penny in. He didn't run away or anything. They took him in for interrogation. Here's another kicker, which Josh and I didn't get to, which I'd like to get to, is that when they took him down to the station to interrogate him, he did not know, Daniel Penny, that Jordan Neely had passed away. So he's being interrogated not knowing that the man has died. I have problems with that. And they are now persecuting him in downtown New York at 100 Center Street in New York criminal court for second-degree manslaughter was the top charge, with max of 15 years. And the second charge is criminally negligent homicide, which carries up to 4 years. Many people call him a hero. After what happened on Friday, it was wild. So the jury was deadlocked, as we've seen before in the Karen Reed case. Jury sent 2 notes saying that they were hung on count 1, and the verdict slip clearly said, if you find not guilty on count 1, which is the manslaughter charge But you find it was self-defense. I'm gonna sort of summarize it because the wording, of course, was far more unclear and hard to understand. If you find him not guilty of manslaughter because you find it was self-defense and he was justified in defense of himself or others, do not move on to count 2, which is the criminally negligent homicide. If you find that he is not guilty of the manslaughter charge for some other reason, like perhaps cause of death, which was also an issue here, medical examiner for the state said the cause of death was this chokehold and didn't even wait for the toxicology reports to come back before she made her determination. The medical exam, the expert for the defense said, no, it wasn't the chokehold that caused his death. It was the drugs. It was a drug overdose. The guy was on so much K2 that the testing doesn't even test for how much of this stuff is in your system. K2 is synthetic marijuana, also known as spice, has the same sort of side effects of cocaine, from what I'm told. That doctor said it was a combination of the drugs, the schizophrenia, his mental illness, and sickle cell trait, which may have caused a reduction in oxygen to his system. So if you find for some other reason than self-defense that he's not guilty of manslaughter, then you can move on to decide whether or not he's guilty of the criminally negligent homicide, which is more of like, would a reasonable person in the same situation know the risks involved with the action that he took, that somebody could die? And I can't really get into it here because we're here to talk about Karen Reed. But what happened was this. The jury came back and said, we are hung on manslaughter, Your Honor. We cannot reach a decision. We're hung. We're never going to reach a decision. After a lot of going back and forth, the judge decided to read them the Allen charge, which is the same as the Tui Rodriguez charge in the Karen Reed case, to say, come on, you guys can do it. You guys can do it. Go back. I'm going to give you one more chance to do it. No other jury can do this better than you. You guys have heard the whole case, and we don't want to try this case again. Please go back and decide. So they go back and after the Allen charge, and then they come back and they send another note out and they said, Your Honor, we're still hung. We can't come to a decision. At that point, the judge turns to the attorneys and says, what do you want to do? And this is what they did not do in the Karen Reed case, what Judge Cannone did not do. Judge says, what do you want to do? Now, I'm relying on this amazing guy on Twitter who's been reporting about this because there are no cameras in the courtroom. And as you know, what we learn about what's going on in this courtroom is only as good as who's reporting it to us. But the judge said to the attorneys, what do you want to do? And the ADA says, in this case, like, just pretend this is the Karen Reed case. So it would be Lally says, you know what, Your Honor, we want to withdraw the manslaughter charge. We want to just dismiss it with prejudice and let them go back and see if they can reach a decision on criminally negligent homicide. Okay. Now, I think this was not a great decision. They had no case law on it. The judge was kind of like, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't even know if there's an authority for that. Take a break and come back and give me some case law. The defense is like, hell to the no. We want a mistrial. We want a mistrial. So after they go back and forth, they bring in the appeals chief, and then the judge says, you know what, I think I'm just going to do it. I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to let you withdraw the manslaughter charge and tell the jury they can come back on Monday and see if they can reach a consensus on the criminally negligent homicide. It is wild. It is wild. So if there's one, and we don't know what the split is. Again, Josh and I were talking, the judge never asked, is it like 11-1? Is it like 6-6? Like, where are we here? Because it can go both ways, right? Let's say there's 11 people who think that he's guilty on the manslaughter and one who thinks that he's not guilty. And then they say, all right, we're taking that away. No big deal. First of all, how certain were they really of this? How certain were they that they were going to get a conviction on the manslaughter? This kid's been living with this for 2 years, facing 15 years in prison. And now you're just gonna be like, yeah, we're just gonna, you know what? Take it off the table. We don't care about the 15 years anymore. We don't think it was manslaughter. Let them go back and decide the 4-year. What are we doing? If there's 11 people who thought that he was guilty and one who thought he wasn't, and then they go on to the next charge, the person who's innocent is probably going to still say, no, he's not guilty of anything. He was saving people that day. If there was 11 people who thought he was not guilty and one who says that he's guilty, is that going to change? Is that person who's saying guilty going to change and say, all right, well, I thought he was guilty only of the manslaughter, but not of the criminally negligent homicide? It makes no sense. It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me. So that's what happened on Friday. They're going back on Monday. It's going to give the defense an entire weekend to think of something. Hopefully they'll come up with some case law that says, yeah, no, you're not allowed to do that, Your Honor. You're not allowed to do that. And it sends a horrible message to the people of New York City. It sends a horrible message to, especially when there's still a manhunt ongoing for the assassin of Brian R. Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, who assassinated this guy in well, it wasn't broad daylight yet, but it was early morning hours. The sun was coming up in front of the Midtown Hilton, right across the street from Radio City in, Christmas season or holiday season where the streets are packed, where 2 weeks ago I did a stream on another homeless guy with a long rap sheet who also had just been let out with no bail for another felony or something, who ran around New York City and stabbed randomly 3 people and killed them. Nobody's going to step in. This is a mess. This is such a mess. And I'm thinking, should I go to court on Monday? Should I go? And then I'm like, I'd rather be here, like watching it with you. Let me know what you guys want to do on Monday, because we're going to be here all day Monday. It's tomorrow already. On Daniel Penny, waiting to see what happens, because either way, it's going to be a mess outside that courthouse, because outside the courthouse on Friday, I think it was the founder of BLM and then another person came out and they were really mad. They're really mad at the DA's office for taking away the manslaughter charge. And then there was another man who got up and spoke, who was like head of like some sort of organization that represents like MTA passengers or something. And he's like, this is atrocious. Like, we need people like Daniel Penny here. So this is a very divisive case. I mean, I don't know if it's as divisive as Karen Reed, but it's divisive. So that's where we are on that. And that took me 17 minutes. So I'm glad that there's at least 2,500 of you here today. Happy Sunday. We're here. We're here for it. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what the plan is for today. There's a 7-page decision. I don't know, because everything kind of is together on one screen. Long decision by Judge Cannone on the Gretchen Voss stuff that Gretchen Voss is going to have to now turn over, and Boston Magazine is going to now have to turn over, which is fine. I'm going to say it a little louder for those in the back who don't seem to understand with their Twitter law degrees what this means. The defense never opposed these motions. Okay, there was no opposition by Karen Reed's defense to the motions of letting the Commonwealth obtain Gretchen Voss's notes. She's the reporter who did the article for Boston Magazine, and or the outtakes from, was that Boston 25, who did the interview with her parents. There was no opposition to either of those motions. Okay. What the defense did oppose, and which was denied, were the motions for Karen Reed's parents' cell phone records. Those were denied by the judge because they have had Karen Reed's cell phone records in their possession, the Commonwealth has, since the day that they seized her phone, which was January 29th, the day that Officer O'Keefe's body was found. So, is today Officer John O'Keefe's birthday? It's today? Okay, it is? All right, let's just have a moment of silence, please, to remember that this case is always, always, always about the victim. And in this case, the victim is Officer John O'Keefe. So let's just take a moment of silence and put prayers up for him. He's watching. Starting now. Thank you. Oh, Sweet Caroline. Oh, I love that name. That's amazing. Heavenly birthday, Officer Don O'Keefe. May you and Karen get justice. That's nice. Thank you, Patty. Connie says, happy heavenly birthday. The only thing that I can say about John O'Keefe's death is that heaven just got a whole lot more awesome. All right. So we're going to talk about the decision regarding Gretchen Voss's notes that the judge came to on, I don't know, Friday. Seems like some of these decisions are decided one day and they're not really logged in with the court for days later. We're also going to talk about the granting of that Boston 25 motion. And then we're going to move on to talk about the podcast 34 Fairview Road, which so many people are squawking about on social media on both sides. I did not watch anybody else's coverage on it, anybody else's like breakdown of it, anybody else's thoughts on it, because I wanted to listen to it for myself and I wanted to come to my own opinions and conclusions. There are 9 episodes out right now. This is on, you can find it on Spotify. You can find it on, I guess, Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. And right now there are 9 episodes out and I've suffered through all, I have listened to all 9 of them. How many of you in the chat, and I want to just know, have listened to this podcast? Put 1 in the chat if you have listened to all the 9 episodes. Put 2 in the chat if you have if you've listened to none of it. And put 3 in the chat if you've like listened to some of it or if you've listened to other people's coverage of it. So 1 if you've listened to the whole entire thing yourself, 2 if you have not listened to any of it, and 3 if you've listened to other people's coverage of it. There's a lot of people who have not listened to this podcast at all. That's interesting. Good. So I'm going to rely also on those of you who have listened to it yourselves to help me come out of the twilight zone on this thing. Because what, in my opinion, started off as something that was very neutral. You took notes too, Stephanie. Oh, Stephanie. Oh, Stephanie. Started off like episode 1, episode 2, very neutral, then took a very sharp turn into a very salacious, I hate Turtle Boy podcast. Like there's really nothing about the Karen Read case. It's bizarre. It is a hit piece like nothing I've ever seen. Okay, so the options again are 1, if you've listened to all of the episodes yourself. Thank you, Linda. 2, if you haven't listened to any of it and you really have no idea what I'm talking about. 3, if you listen to other people's coverage of it and or listened to it yourself a little bit. Kimmy's never listened to it. Scott was like, first 2 episodes, then I threw up and was done. Well, Scott, the first 2 were the easiest to digest. Speaking of throwing up, did anybody watch the movie The Substance? You can rent it on Prime and other such things. The Substance, it's with Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. Margaret Qualley is Andy McDowell's daughter. It's wild. It is wild. If you like horror movies, psychological thrillers, and you can handle the grossness of it, it's wild. It's called The Substance. I'm going to highly recommend if you can. I made it through. Yeah, I did. Oh, yes, I did. And I said to I can't say her name because she's over there, you know, that robot that I speak to sometimes to ask questions. How old is Demi Moore? It's about women, it's about aging, it's wild. It's wild. I recommend. Loved it. Melissa loved it. Yeah. It's good. Talk about throwing up. Don't eat before you watch that movie. All right. Moving on. Oh, I also started another show last night that I'm going to highly recommend before we move on, and that is called Landman on Paramount Plus. It's another Tyler Sheridan, I guess, show with Billy Bob Thornton, who ever since I saw him in Goliath, I just can't get enough of him. I used to not understand him at all, and I'm like, Angelina Jolie was married to this guy? I don't get it, but I get it. Landman, it's on Paramount Plus. It's all about Texas and the oil fields and like the craziness of it, and Demi Moore's in that too, and also John Hamm, my personal favorite. So check that out on Paramount Plus. Loved it. All right, good. Okay, cool. All right, So after we go through these documents, then we're going to talk about the podcast, and we're going to talk about why this decision on the Gretchen Voss materials, how that relates to this podcast on 34 Fairview Road, and how, in my opinion, both of these things could be very helpful to the defense. Okay? All right. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is go over this Gretchen Voss decision. And this has me like in the twilight zone again about Hank Brennan, the hired gun that's been hired by Norfolk County to come in and retry Karen Reed. And his strategy, the pleadings that he's filing, which are oftentimes chock full of not only typographical errors but grammatical errors, and it's again, I talked to other lawyers about this, and we all feel that we're in the twilight zone of some sort. So this is paper number 437. That's how many documents have been filed in this case so far. Killamilla, I'm just going to address this before we get too off topic. And this was with regard to Daniel Penny, who says, I hate it. They tried to make it a race thing. Also, if an officer did the same thing, it would have been another day in the office. So no questions asked. That is with regard to Daniel Penny. Yeah. And I got to agree with you. I got to say that, like, when Daniel Penny decided to step in that day, I don't think he saw race. I think he just saw a guy who was going crazy, who had a really long rap sheet, who, by the way, was out on bail, had a charge pending for assaulting a woman on a subway. Jury didn't hear any of that stuff. But, in hindsight, 2020, right? Like, if that person, if Jordan Neely was white, would they have prosecuted Daniel Penny? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. A lot of people have a lot of opinions on that, but yeah, thank you. Thank you for your super chat. And also What the Duckling for loving my readings and opinions and for hanging here for 4 months, and on top for you super sticker. All right. So this came out at some point last week while other things were happening. This is the memorandum and decision and order on the Commonwealth's renewed motion for all audio recordings, interview notes, emails, text messages, and voicemails in the possession of Gretchen Voss and or MetroCorp. Just a friendly reminder to all of you who live in Massachusetts that Massachusetts is one of a handful of states that does not recognize any kind of journalistic shield or reporter privilege. So there is no such thing as an off-the-record conversation in Massachusetts when you're speaking to a reporter. In New York, that's a thing. If I'm giving an interview, I can say, all right, well, this is off the record. And when we're off the record, they can't report on what I'm saying. But Massachusetts, there's no such thing as off the record. And this is the judge's order. The defendant, Karen Reed, is charged with murder in the second degree in violation of this charge, manslaughter while operating under the influence of alcohol and leaving the scene of personal injury and death. The charges arise from the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, who was found unresponsive in the snow outside a residence in Canton on the morning of January 29th of 2022. And I'm just realizing that I forgot to finish my thought earlier when I was comparing the Daniel Penny case to the Karen Reed case. That is similar to if when the jury came back as hung on the first count, which was the murder in the second degree, that's as if Lally came and said, you know what, Your Honor, we're just going to dismiss that charge, murder in the second degree. Dismiss it. Let them go back and see if they can reach a consensus on manslaughter. They didn't do that. They didn't even inquire as to what charges the jury and Karen Reed was hung on, because, as you know, we found out later that the jurors started contacting the attorneys the day after the verdict and saying, well, wait a second. We acquitted her on count 1 and count 3. We were only hung on count 2. The decision, as far as I know, has not come out from the SJC, which is the highest court in Massachusetts, the appeals court that we watched the arguments on. And my understanding was that their term ended yesterday. So I didn't see the decision come out. Maybe it'll take a couple of days for it to hit the docket, but I don't have a copy of it. And I was stalking their docket yesterday. They will not reconvene until January. My understanding is also that they usually render their decisions from everything that happened during that term before they move on to their new term. But it seems that anything goes here in Massachusetts. I don't know. As soon as I do get that appellate decision, we will talk about it. We'll talk about it. Going back to the document, the Commonwealth previously sought, pursuant to Rule 17, records related to interviews with the defendant conducted by Gretchen Voss and used by MetroCorp, DBA Boston Magazine, to publish an article about O'Keefe's death and the subsequent prosecution of the defendant. As to the records disputed by Boston Magazine, the court denied the motion without prejudice on narrow grounds. Without prejudice means you can bring your motion again. With prejudice means that's it. You're done. You can't bring the motion again. So for example, in the Daniel Penny case, that first charge was dismissed or withdrawn with prejudice, meaning because of double jeopardy, he can never be tried on that manslaughter charge again. The Commonwealth has now filed a renewed motion for all audio records, interview notes, emails, text messages, and voicemails in possession of Voss and/or Boston Magazine pursuant to Rule 17. After careful consideration, the Commonwealth's motion is allowed. So she's giving it to them. Again, I'm going to repeat this louder. The defense did not oppose this motion. They had no opposition to it. They took no position. They don't care. They don't care if the judge lets them have Voss's notes. What does that tell you? They're not afraid of anything that's in her notes. They're not afraid of any of the off-the-record conversations. Background. On September 27th of 2023, Boston Magazine published an article titled "The Karen Reed Case in Canton, the Killing That Tore a Town Apart," written by Voss. The article details, among other things, the events leading up to the charges against the defendant and those leading to the defendant's suspicions regarding an alleged cover-up, as well as the defendant's thoughts and opinions about the investigation into O'Keefe's death. Voss interviewed dozens of people. All right, come on, pen. I need a red pen. You know how I need a red pen? For the story, including the defendant. Question: who were these dozens of people? Do all of their off-the-record conversations now come into play? Are they all fair game too? I would argue yes. Dozens of people on both sides. What's good for the goose, right, my friends? Or the duck? What's good for the duck? She interviewed the defendant 3 times. For 2 of the interviews, which were conducted on June 30th and July 13th, those were the on-the-record interviews, the defendant's attorneys were present, and the interviews were audio recorded with the consent of the defendant and her attorneys. These interviews were considered on the record, except for certain parts which were off the record following interjections by counsel. Voss also interviewed the defendant on July 7th of 2023, off the record interview, at the defendant's home without her counsel present, in an effort for Voss to set an atmosphere for her story. This interview was not recorded, but Voss took handwritten notes at the meeting. She promised the defendant to keep the interview off the record and did not use any of the defendant's statements from that interview in the article. On January 4th of 2024, the Commonwealth filed a motion for records directed at Boston Magazine and Voss, seeking an order for production of all recorded statements of Karen Reed, including any video recordings and any interview notes or memorialized statements made or adopted by Karen Reed in connection with the article written by Voss. Okay, so this was before the first trial. This is right around the time that I started even covering this case at all on my channel. I think the first appearance that I did on Court TV, and I think I went on Court TV before I even started covering this case on my channel, was around January 6th. So this was before the first trial. And we did go over this motion at length all the way back when it was made. Boston Magazine agreed to produce the audio tapes from the on-the-record interviews, providing they may redact information which the defendant and or her attorneys requested would be kept off the record. However, Boston Magazine opposed the motion to the extent it sought off-the-record statements made by the defendant in the audio recordings from the on-the-record interviews and Voss's handwritten notes of statements made by the defendant during the off-the-record interview. So I guess at some point during the recording, when the attorneys were present, they're like, okay, this is off the record. And then those portions of the tapes, when they were turned over, were redacted. Indeed, with the written opposition was an affidavit from Voss, and this is the first opposition in January 2024, wherein she averred that since the publication of the article, she had been subjected to harassment, and she feared that if compelled to turn over the requested material, she would be exposing herself to further harassment and endangering the safety of herself and her family, which is horrific. I don't think anybody should be harassing anybody, including me and including my friend Auntie Deb, which, by the way, if you've been following that drama, Auntie Deb versus Jewel Carp on the YouTube, Jimmy's getting upset. Jimmy is getting upset, and he's not going to let her get away with it. And there's so much craziness. Thank you. My eyes bleed if I see certain names posted in the chat. Please don't make my eyes bleed, says one of my amazing moderators, Team Brittany, who is one of the reasons why this channel is the way it is, because she and Scott are eagle-eyed, as is Little Cupcake and other people. So yeah, there are certain names that we just use initials for and such as that. Because we don't want to harass anybody. But if they come for me, like they have, we may look at some of that stuff later. And Auntie Deb, Jimmy's getting upset. Tell me if you know where that reference is from. You know the ones, guys, says Team Brittany. Abbreviations are a great thing. Yeah, let's not use anybody's full. My mother used to tell me, she used to say, when you're in public, don't ever say anybody's full name, because you never know who's sitting at the next table. You never know who's sitting at the next table. Hi, Scott. Scott, I know the Jets play at 1. If you got to go, you got to go. Or you can do both at the same time. But look, what are they, 3 and 9 right now? I mean, let's face it. I got my Colorado shirt on because I'm still have hope. Still hope something's going to happen. All right. On January 23rd of 2024, this court issued a decision on the Commonwealth's motion for records, allowing the motion as to the redacted on the record interviews and denying the motion without prejudice as to the off the record interview and as to Voss's handwritten notes. In so doing, the court noted that its decision to deny part of the motion was a close question. But the court was persuaded that given the extraordinary public attention and scrutiny given to this case, Voss's fears for her own safety and that of her family were warranted and outweighed the Commonwealth's interest in obtaining the evidence. However, the court stated that the Commonwealth was not precluded from reasserting its motion in the future. The Commonwealth did not do so before trial. They didn't do it. Lally didn't do it. So let's just point out the obvious here. Lally had all of this other stuff from Gretchen Voss, the stuff that was on the record. And he didn't use any of it. He didn't use any of it in the first trial. He didn't call Gretchen Voss. She was there every single day during the trial, and he didn't use it. Is Brennan saying, I'm smarter than Lally? Or, yeah, well, there wasn't really anything interesting in the stuff they turned over, but maybe there's some stuff in the off-the-record conversations that we can use against her. Trial began in April 2024. On July 1st of 2024, after the jury represented to the court that it was hopelessly deadlocked, the court declared a mistrial. Well, this is interesting that the judge puts this in her order, hopelessly deadlocked. Well, they kind of really weren't hopelessly deadlocked because they did come to a verdict on counts 1 and 3, maybe. The court declared a mistrial. Retrial is set for 2025. She doesn't say when. She also has not ruled on the motion whether or not she's going to adjourn the trial to April Fool's Day. As of now, it is still scheduled for, I think, January 27th, which is a Monday. In advance of trial, the Commonwealth now seeks to renew and expand its previous motion for Boston Magazine and Voss to produce 1, the complete unredacted audio of all interviews between Voss and the defendant, 2, handwritten notes of any conversations between Voss and the defendant, 3, all emails between the defendant and Voss and or Boston Magazine, 4, all text messages between the defendant and Voss and or Boston Magazine, and 5, all voicemails between the defendant and Voss and or Boston Magazine. All right, audio, handwritten notes, emails, text messages, voicemails. And they're extending this not to just Voss, but anybody on staff at Boston Magazine. Discussion. Here are the requirements for Rule 17 motion to succeed. Under Massachusetts Rule 17, Rule of Criminal Procedure 17, the court may issue a summons ordering a third party. So let's go back and just review. Rule 17 motions have to do with third party records. To produce books, papers, documents, or other objects prior to trial. The purpose of the rule is to expedite the trial by providing a time and place before trial for the inspection of the subpoenaed materials. The party seeking the summons, in this case, the Commonwealth, must establish good cause by showing, number 1, we've been through this a million times. This is the quoting the US v. Nixon, Lampron, all the cases that we have become so familiar with, not by choice, but by necessity. US v. Nixon is always cited in there. I am not a crook. I am not a crook. The Commonwealth must establish good cause. This is what they need to show. 1, that the documents are evidentiary and relevant. 2, that they are not otherwise procurable in advance of trial by due diligence, meaning we cannot get them from any other source. The only source of these records is Gretchen Voss and Boston Magazine. Number 3, the party cannot properly prepare for trial without you giving us these records, judge, or you ordering these records be given to us or turned over. And 4, that we are making this application in good faith and this is not a fishing expedition. Remember those Lampron prongs. That is why the judge denied Hank Brennan's motions for Mr. and Mrs. Reed's cell phone records because, as pointed out by Liza Little in her oral arguments, Brennan's papers were facially insufficient in that they did not even address these 4 prongs of Lampron. And Your Honor, she said, under Lampron, he must address these. And if he didn't, you must deny his motions, which she did. The Commonwealth has shown the material sought meets the requirements of Lampron. Statements by a defendant regarding the crimes for which he is charged are evidentiary and relevant to her criminal prosecution. The defendant voluntarily made statements to Voss regarding the events led to O'Keefe's death, and such statements are admissible pursuant to Rule 801. Neither the statements made by the defendant in the presence of her attorneys nor the statements made by her attorneys are subject to any privilege. And that is true. If you are an attorney, you are meeting with a client, and your client wants to have somebody else in the room during your conversations, like their mother, their brother, their boyfriend, their whoever, the client needs to be advised, look, once you bring in another person into our conversations here, the conversations that we have are no longer privileged. So you need to make that decision very, very carefully. Okay. And with regard to the psychedelics, can we keep that out of the chat as well? At least the name of them? Thank you. Thank you. That has not been proven to be true, although some people have said that that is true. The material sought is only in the possession of Boston Magazine and Voss, so there's no privilege. They're the only ones who have this information. They can't get it any other way. Although Boston Magazine contends that where the redacted audio revealed nothing relevant, the request for unredacted records amounts to a fishing expedition. So this is Boston Magazine who's opposing this. Okay, remember the attorney who came in for Boston Magazine? This is not Karen Reed's defense team opposing this. I'm going to say it again. Boston Magazine is opposing this because this sends a chilling effect for reporters throughout the state of Massachusetts. Because when they tell you it's off the record, this decision is telling you, no, it's really not. There's no such thing as off the record in Massachusetts. Although Boston Magazine contends that where the redacted audio revealed nothing relevant, the request for unredacted records amounts to a fishing expedition. The Commonwealth has adequately refuted this argument, says the judge. Specifically, the Commonwealth has explained with examples that the redacted audio contains relevant information, but the redactions inhibit its ability to put the unredacted statements in context and obscure evidentiary information, often interpreting the defendant's statements on issues relevant and material to the charges. Accordingly, the Commonwealth has satisfied the Rule 17 standard. Okay, so she says you met all the requirements of Lampron on this one, Mr. Brennan, so good for you, since you didn't even address them in your other Rule 17 motions for the Reed cell phone records. Karen Reed said when she left court that day, before this motion was decided, it was the last motion day that we watched together. She said to the press something like, and I'm going to paraphrase here, "Isn't it crazy that the networks and Boston Magazine have been hanging on to my confessions for over a year and they never published them?" And she's being sarcastic, and rightfully so, because if any confessions existed in these off-the-record conversations, knowing there's no privilege, don't you think they would have published that? And she said, and if that's true, don't you think that's malfeasance on all of your parts, as she was addressing the press? And that's exactly true. And ask yourself, as a reasonable person, do you think that if Karen Reed said to Gretchen Voss or Ted Daniel or any of these other reporters, 2020, Nightline, Dateline, I really did do it? And yeah, and by the way, I also really did have 12 drinks or 9 drinks or whatever. Don't you think they would have published that? Because you've watched all of these pieces. They're certainly not Karen Reed friendly. If they were sitting on a smoking gun like that, you can bet your bottom dollar they would have put it in there. It wouldn't have wound up on the cutting room floor. In fact, I would submit to you that some of these publications have have left on the cutting room floor all the stuff that is exculpatory because they wanted their stories to be a little bit more salacious. It's what they do. They're literally like tabloids on television. And when I listen to people, and I can't remember what case this was that we just covered, who came in and said, "Well, I definitely was leaning towards not guilty." But then, I watched 48 hours. It wasn't on the Karen Reed case. It was on a different case that we just covered. I was definitely leaning towards not guilty, but then, I watched 48 hours and then I was like, yeah, definitely guilty. Like, wait a second. We watched this entire trial together and you were leaning towards not guilty, but then you watched a 48 hours piece and then you changed your mind. It's wild the way people think. It's wild. Portion number 2. Was it Delphi? I don't think it was Delphi because I don't think they did a 48 hours on Delphi. I think it was something else more recent. I don't recall. Because we didn't get to watch the Delphi trial. It was a trial that we actually watched. That's what it was. It was Ashley Benefield. That's what it was. You're right. Thank you, Duckgate conspirator. Somebody who had watched the entire Ashley Benefield trial and was like, I believed her. I believed that she was in fear for her life. Thank you. Thanks, you guys. And then I saw 48 hours and I was like, no way. She's guilty. She did it. So, I mean, like it or not, these TV programs do have a way of swaying public opinion. And that's what a lot of them sort of like intend to do, right? They're meant to be salacious. They're meant to get people to watch. They're meant for ratings. Right. Thank you, Suzanne. Suzanne says if they had any information that was salacious, you can bet that it would already be out there in the media. No questions about that. Right. I agree. And thank you, Heather, for being in here for 2 months and loves Dave Matthews also. Woot woot. And thanks for Katie Ann for becoming a new member. Welcome. Welcome. Point number 2 in Judge Cannone's order: disclosure of reporters' confidential information. Because this case concerns the compelled disclosure of confidential information provided to a journalist, therefore, before allowing the motion, the court must also consider Voss's and Boston Magazine's claim that the court should deny disclosure based upon a reporter's privilege to keep confidential information from compelled disclosure. Oh, is Kelly here? Hi, Kelly. Hi, Kelly Reed. If you're here, I saw someone say hi to you, but I didn't see you. The chat moves too quickly and I can't really watch it while I'm reading, but hello. Hello. There she is. Hi, Kelly. Under Massachusetts law, news reporters do not have a constitutionally based testimonial privilege that other citizens do not have. Common law principles, however, afford news reporters some protection. In supervising discovery, a presiding judge is obliged to consider the effect that the compelled discovery would have on the values protected by the First Amendment, even though these values were entitled to no constitutional privilege. The party seeking to avoid disclosure must first make some showing that the asserted damage to the free flow of information is more than speculative or theoretical. If such a showing is made, then the court must weigh A, the public interest in having every person's evidence available against B, the public interest in the free flow of information. Here, Voss has made an adequate showing that the damage to the free flow of information is more than speculative or theoretical. In her January 17th, 2024 affidavit, and I remember this was before the first trial, almost a year ago already, my God. Voss avers that she made certain promises to the defendant that her off-the-record statements would not be included in the published article without approval of the defendant's legal counsel. So she made these promises, but she knew or should have known that Massachusetts was not going to protect her. Such promises allowed for Voss to establish a relationship with the defendant and conduct the interview. Yeah, like lull her into a false sense of security. Having to produce off-the-record statements and her handwritten notes of the interview would hinder Voss's ability to assure sources in the future that off-the-record statements would not be disclosed, and therefore her ability to obtain tips and lead from confidential sources. Yeah. Here's the thing, folks. If you think that Gretchen Voss wants to get up on that stand in what could be like a career-ruining moment, absolutely 100% she does not. I mean, it's not even like so much her credibility is shot. Her ability to get any future interviews is going to be squashed. Who's going to want to talk to her? Who's going to want to talk to her? It's like she's like, I mean, like a rat. Like it's not good for her. She does not want this. She does not want to have to get up there on the stand and talk about all of her off the record conversations, because who's ever going to speak to her again? I mean, can she just like kiss her journalistic career goodbye? Because or just go to another state that actually protects reporters, like New York or California. This is wild. And the judge doesn't seem to give a duck that Gretchen Voss's family and Gretchen Voss herself has been threatened. They have to call. If they want any of her information to come in, they have to call her to authenticate it. Thank you, Shauna. That's a good question. Right? She's the only one who can authenticate her handwritten notes. She's the only one who can authenticate all of this stuff. She's the person that Karen spoke to. This stuff is not allowed to just come in a vacuum. Could be a career-ending move, a career-ending day, the day they call her to the stand. And that's sad. I don't know anything about her career or how long she's been doing this, but it sends a chilling message to reporters and journalists of all kinds in Massachusetts. Johnny's like, sorry, but I shred my notes after 30 days. Yeah, what's the retention policy on this, right? What's the retention policy? Kate says, right, Voss would be smart to connect with a legislature who wants to change this law. And I'm a procedure person. I'm a constitutionalist. Like, I think this is outrageous. I think this is outrageous, but this is Massachusetts law, whether you like Gretchen Voss or not. This is horrible for her. This is horrible for her career. And Linda's like, yeah, she can kiss her journalist lanyard and pass bye-bye. This is not good for anyone. Especially, they're going to get all this stuff, and then what if they don't call her? It's like there's no win for her either way. Either way, she loses. Nobody's ever going to want to talk to her again. Right? Knowing your bits from your bites says reporters have gone to jail in the past in Massachusetts for refusing to do this. Mary Richardson comes to mind. I'm not familiar with Mary Richardson, but interesting. Ann says protect journalists. I don't know anything about it, but look at what they did to Aiden too. Well, they got him on different stuff, allegedly, right? It wasn't because he wouldn't turn over his stuff. It was for alleged witness intimidation. That's a different statute, right? And then a violation of his bail conditions by allegedly pushing LG onto the couch. And then it turned out that that was withdrawn. So he spent 60 days in jail for what exactly? Yeah, pull an Albert and upgrade her notebook. Says Kit. Well done. Iron Rabbit says Voss needs to move to a neighboring state that has rights. Mm-hmm. The court agrees that it is likely true that Voss would not have obtained the information she did from the defendant. We still don't even know what that information is, by the way. And I'm going to submit to you that it's nothing. So for turning over all this off the record nothingness, the career is going to be down the tubes, in my opinion. If she had not promised to keep certain statements from becoming public and that her ability to make such assurances in the future may be compromised if disclosure is compelled. Yeah, basically, we don't give a duck about your career, Ms. Voss. Give it to me, baby. Turn it over to Hanky Panky. We don't care about your career. Thus, Voss and Boston Magazine have made the threshold showing that disclosure poses a risk to the free flow of information. Because Voss and Boston Magazine have made some showing that disclosure of the off-the-record statements in the redacted audio, and Voss's handwritten notes presents a danger to the free flow of information that is more than speculative or theoretical. That danger must be balanced against the public's need for the evidence. So the court's doing a balancing test. What's more important? What's more important here? Gretchen Voss's career and her ability to ever talk to a source in the future, or the public's right to hear this evidence that may or may not exist in these records. And the court is going to say, we want to know the tea on Karen Read and see if Karen Read confessed to you during those off-the-record conversations. It is here where this case differs from the more typical case where a reporter resists disclosure of confidential sources as opposed to information. To be sure, the compelled production of a reporter's resource materials can constitute a significant intrusion into the news gathering and editorial processes. However, the lack of a confidential source may be an important element in balancing the state's need for the material sought against the interest of the journalist in preventing production in a particular case. Here, the Commonwealth has shown a strong interest in obtaining the information sought for the defendant's criminal prosecution. The defendant is charged with several serious crimes. The information sought is her own account of the events leading up to O'Keefe's death. The redacted material suggests that the account she gave to Boston Magazine may have differed in certain respects from expected evidence at trial and from other accounts she has given. However, the redactions prevent the Commonwealth from fully understanding the defendant's statements. The redactions also inhibit the Commonwealth from hearing the defendant's statements on relevant and material issues, such as her consumption of alcohol on the night in question. Okay, so keep in mind, the court is giving significant weight to the fact that Karen Reed may have said one thing to Gretchen Voss about like what door John O'Keefe went into, whether he poked his head in the door, than she did to, let's say, Nightline, Dateline, pick a network. I can't even remember at this point. They're all conflating in my mind. And so therefore she's saying this is really, it's significant. Well, hearken back with me, if you will, to the statements given by some of the percipient witnesses on the stand, right? And how their statements evolved and changed over time, or Proctor wrote them down wrong or something. Proctor said that Chris and Julie Albert went to 34 Fairview. Yeah, exactly. Right. So again, think about this reasoning in the context of all of these other people who have already testified in front of a state grand jury, a federal grand jury, the first trial, and who may be, as we speak, giving interviews and or filming with a production company. Does that open the floodgates to all of their interviews as well? Maybe. Based on this reasoning, maybe some of the information that they are giving to journalists and their off-the-record conversations that are being filmed for, I don't even know who, Netflix, I don't know, could be discoverable now because they would tend to impeach them at the next trial. Right? Remember, none of this stuff that she told Gretchen Voss was like under oath. She didn't swear to tell the truth. This is not sworn testimony. This is a conversation off the record with a reporter. Right? Just put a pin in that. So she says here, however, the redactions prevent the Commonwealth from fully understanding the defendant's statements. The redactions also inhibit the Commonwealth from hearing the defendant's statements on relevant and material issues, such as her consumption of alcohol on the night in question. Okay. I'm going to point this out because to me it's obvious, but apparently if the Commonwealth is so confident in their DUI element of this case, based upon the blood alcohol extrapolation of their witnesses and the blood draw that was taken the next day, subject to a section that was really only an ethanol test, that wasn't even really an official BAC test, and they're so confident in the testimony of their guy who literally said on the stand, like, look, I don't really know. This isn't really like even accurate because like I don't even really know the time of her last drink. If you're so confident in that part of your case, why do you need what you think is going to be Karen Reed's confessions about how many drinks she made? Why does that even matter? Because according to you, your experts and the people that worked in the lab at the hospital drew her blood, They have in their blood panel, there's some sort of ethanol level. That's not really a serum test. It's a different test. It wasn't taken subject to, MSP standards or anything, but you're so confident that you're going to be able to show in the next trial that she was drunk. What does it matter what she said? I don't know. The math ain't math in here for me, but Yuri's math teacher, who has a great name, is like, yeah, remember how Yuri testified on the stand that she had 9 drinks, and then Lally closed on that too, that she had 9 drinks, but where did we really ever see that she had 9 drinks? There was no receipt that ever said that she had 9 drinks. There was no evidence. There was no bartender called to say, I handed her 9 shots of vodka and I watched her drink them. There was some video of her at the bar drinking a clear liquid. She says she was drinking water at the waterfall, which Hank Brennan said at the last motions hearing, like, it is incredulous to believe that she could have been sipping water at the waterfall. I think it's incredulous for a grown man, to not believe that a lot of us drink water at bars. That's what I find to be incredulous, but I digress. Thus, it is clear that the Commonwealth is not seeking a needless disclosure or making a frivolous inquiry, but rather to obtain information vital to its prosecution that cannot be obtained from another source. And then there's a case here, matter of Roche, that says discovery should not be used as a means of harassing a reporter or other potential witness by forcing the needless disclosure of confidential relationships. Well, that's interesting. Put a pin in that. Send that case to, not that he probably doesn't already have it, to Bettero, but okay. And there's another case from 1973 that says the judge must protect news reporters from unnecessary harassment or frivolous inquiries. Moreover, unlike cases where disclosure of a confidence source is at issue, in this case, Voss and Boston Magazine and the defendant, who was accompanied by her counsel during 2 of the 3 interviews, presumably knew or should have known that there is no privilege for news reporters under Massachusetts law. Thus, despite any assurances by Voss to the contrary, Voss and the defendant knew or should have known that all of the statements in the interviews, whether termed on or off the record, were potentially discoverable. Given this knowledge of all parties involved, the danger to the free flow information is lessened in this case. Well, that's kind of like imputed knowledge, number 1. But yeah, we're all learning. We are all learning from this. We all now know that if you were ever interviewed by a Massachusetts reporter or a production company doing business in the state of Massachusetts, that nothing you say is off the record ever. I was asked to participate in documentaries regarding this case. I've been asked to be on court TV many more times despite what all the trolls will tell you. And I've declined for many reasons. Not the least of which is you have no control over the final edit. You would have no control over how they twist your words and cut your answers up and make it look like you said one thing when you really said something else and shorten it. And wait, you want me to travel myself to Dedham? And this was when the trial was going on the first time. You want me to travel myself to Dedham, to get up there by myself, to pay for everything, to pay for my, to speak to you how does that even in any way benefit me to be part of your documentary? It doesn't. It doesn't. And I would suggest to anyone who is ever asked to participate in one of these things that so much more harm can be done than good. It is not going to benefit you in any way. It may feel fun to be like, oh, Netflix wants me to come on and talk about what I think about this or that, or Discovery ID or something, wants me, and how exciting. How exciting until, your life is ruined because of it. Same thing goes for reality shows, by the way. I would never recommend anybody go on a reality show. There is nothing good that can come of that except the destruction of your life as you know it. So there's that. You have zero control. I come on the YouTube, I come on the tube of law, and I say what I want to say, and I have complete control over what I say. I have complete control over my edit. If I don't like it, I do live streams only, so if I don't like it, I can take it down, I can cut it out, I can delete the nasty. But when you're at the mercy of some production company who doesn't give a crap about you, they don't give a crap about you. Nothing good's going to come of it. Accordingly, the court concludes that the public interest in obtaining the information outweighs the danger posed to the public interest in the free flow of information. Okay, additional arguments against disclosure. Point 3. Boston Magazine asserts several other arguments in opposition to the request for unredacted audio interviews, as well as the additional records sought. Voss's handwritten notes of any conversations between she and the defendant, and the emails, text messages, and voicemails between the defendant and Voss and her Boston Magazine. The court finds these arguments unavailing. To the extent that Boston Magazine argues the Commonwealth's motion should be denied again, based on Voss's fears for her own safety and the continued harassment of her and her family, the record does not show that Voss continues to have such fears or experience such harassment. And here's the big fail. Do you remember that Gretchen Voss was in the courtroom that day when they argued this, only like last week? Judge goes on to say the Boston Magazine article written by Voss was published over a year ago, and the harassment detailed in her January 17th of 2024 affidavit occurred in the months immediately following its publication. Notably, Voss has not filed an updated affidavit stating that she is still subject to harassment or in fear for her safety, in support of the opposition to the renewed motion. So they didn't file on her behalf an updated affidavit saying, I'm still in fear for my life. This stuff is still happening to me. And if you release this stuff, not only is it going to start up again, it's going to ramp up. And at one point during the hearing, the judge said, isn't she here in the courtroom? Isn't she here? Her attorney could have put her up on the stand to have her testify to that, and he didn't. Moreover, at the hearing to the renewed motion, counsel for Boston Magazine acknowledged Voss's representation in open court that she attended the defendant's trial daily, thus suggesting that she no longer continues to be overcome with fear of members of the public interested in the case. Well, okay, we can extrapolate that out now, can't we? She went to the trial every single day, therefore she can't possibly be afraid of members of the public. Ooh, that's a slippery slope, isn't it? Isn't that like saying, okay, well, Jennifer McCabe, Brian Albert, Colin Albert, all came to the trial. They came and they sat in on those closing arguments. So there's no way they could possibly be in fear of Aidan Carney and or people of the public harassing them because they showed up. Because you said that right here in your honor, in your order, your honor, in your honor, your order. Listen to that again. Voss said that she attended the defendant's trial daily, thus suggesting that she no longer continues to be overcome with fear of members of the public interested in the case. Well, can't we extrapolate that out to other people too? I don't know. Am I crazy? Maybe. Could be. Possibly. Boston Magazine contends that producing the records would be unduly burdensome. It's unclear to the court how having to now produce unredacted audio files as opposed to redacting hours of audio would be unduly burdensome to Boston Magazine. The production of the additional materials, which appear to be readily available in some format, or which Boston Magazine asserts do not exist, would also not be unduly burdensome. Finally, Boston Magazine argues that the Commonwealth has impermissibly expanded its previous request. However, it cites no authority and makes no compelling argument explaining how the Commonwealth's previous narrower request precludes it from now renewing and expanding its request, particularly where this court's previous order explicitly stated that the Commonwealth was not precluded from reasserting its motion. That's correct. It was denied without prejudice. Footnote 1 says the Commonwealth has not objected to Boston Magazine's request that to the extent the court orders production of the text messages between the defendant and or Boston Magazine, it be permitted to provide the text messages in a format they automatically assume when forwarded to one phone or another. What? All right. I don't have the brain power to figure out what that means right now. Order. For the foregoing reasons, the Commonwealth's renewed motion for all audio recordings, interview notes, emails, text messages, and voicemails in the possession of Gretchen Voss and or Metro Corp is allowed. The records are for counsel and the defendant only. There shall be no dissemination of any of the materials without further leave of the court. XOXO. Beverly with Justin L.Y. If you know, you know. Cannone, Justice of the Supreme Court, and this was dated December 5th. And just as a reminder, today is December 8th. So this was like Thursday. And I don't know if it hit the docket until Friday. So there is that. Boston Magazine and Gretchen Voss must turn over all of her off-the-record things and stuff and notes and text messages and everything such as like that. Let's go to the chat for a moment. Latina, thanks for the 5. Melanie, I have a clip from Voss's lawyer from the last trial. What do you mean from the last motion hearing? He states that if there was a confession, Boston Globe would have made it, Boston Magazine, you mean, right? Would have made it into the story. Yeah, but they don't want to take his word for it. They want the actual notes so that they can try and scour the notes and try and find this confession themselves. Thanks, Latina, for your super chat. Keith, thanks for the 5. Imagine back in the day if OJ told 48 hours he did it and they sat on it, not a chance. P.S. Dion and Son to Las Vegas. Dion better not leave. Better not leave. Kat, thanks for becoming a member. And for gifting a membership as well. And to whoever was gifted, welcome, welcome, welcome. 20th Century Fox, I rarely disagree with lovely Melanie, but wouldn't potential interviewees understand that Cannone and Massachusetts general law forced it on Voss if she has to testify? I don't know how we're disagreeing. I'm agreeing with you on this. Yeah, everyone in Massachusetts should know the law and should know that their off-the-record stuff is not off the record, and that's why the defense didn't oppose it, because the defense knows, right? But Voss should also know, as should Boston Magazine. But again, the motion was made the first time, and the court said, no, you can have the on-the-record stuff, but not off-the-record stuff until you come back to me with a more compelling reason of why you should get the off-the-record stuff. And this is when they had to come back, make their next application. And now she finds the reasons compelling enough based on, they pointed out some discrepancies between the Boston Magazine article and the Nightline, Dateline, ABC, NBC, and then the Boston 25 stuff. So I think that they do. I'm not sure that I understand what you're saying. I'm not sure that we're disagreeing on this, is what I'm saying. Thank you for your super chat. Oh, was it Jim Marson's birthday today too? Miss Mojo Horizon, she knows that story because I love Jim Marson. I had a friend who would always bake Jim Marson a birthday cake when we were in high school and bring it to school and we would celebrate Jim Marson's birthday. Miss Mojo Horizon remembers. I forgot it was today, but happy birthday to Jim Marson. Jojo, thanks for the 20. Maybe Voss needs to utilize this ridiculous decision as her time to shine as a true journalist. Maybe she should refuse to comply with this decision. Turtle Boy didn't back down, just saying. The court's pointing out here that this is different from revealing a source. And I think that if she was being forced to reveal a source, the decision might be different. But again, I think we can use this decision for lots of things now. So there's that. Laura, thanks. If I remember Andrew Jarecki catching Robert Durst's top mic moment on the Jinx, he said, I unalived them all. HBO. No, I didn't follow that at all, but maybe a lot of other viewers did. Thank y'all for your super chat. Any chance the boss can have a subpoena squashed? I don't think so. I mean, this is a court order now. They have to turn it over. I don't think so. Sweet Caroline, thank you for the 20. Recall ER doctor testified, I didn't order that blood work. I know you can track the order being a nurse, so who did? That's interesting. I think the ER doctor also did not recall treating John O'Keefe. Now you're really testing my memory, Sweet Caroline. Thanks for the 20. Yellow cottage, but if they were going to order blood work, wouldn't they have ordered like the proper BAC test? Like if that was like a nefarious thing? What they're trying to do here is use the ethanol test and extrapolate it and reverse engineer it into some sort of legally admissible in court blood alcohol content test when that's not what that blood panel was designed or intended to do. David Reese, do they think Karen's attorneys are dumb enough to discuss legal facts in front of a journalist? No, but I think that they think that when Karen's attorneys weren't there, because there was one session, let's say, that was supposed to be totally off the record, that she might have said something they could use. So, I've you know what, David, at this point in my life, I'm too old to like even like keep trying to figure out what people think, because I've decided that it is an exercise in futility. And there are some things that you are just never, ever, ever going to understand about certain people. Never. So remember now that they're going to have to turn whatever they receive from Boston Magazine, they're going to have to turn over to the defense, right? And what if there were some off the records conversations about such things like the FBI investigation, potential like wiretapping and stuff that was going on of Marcy's office? What if that stuff was off the record and now it's going to come in? And if Gretchen Voss is put on the stand, she's going to be allowed to be crossed on a lot of things. A lot of things. For example, emails between not just Gretchen Voss and Karen Reed, emails between Gretchen Voss and David Traub. You guys remember David Traub? David Traub was the spokesman for the Norfolk County DA's office. He set up things with her. He fed her information for her article. There's emails back and forth between David Traub. He's gone now. Yeah, doesn't now. Emails back and forth between Gretchen Voss and David Traub about such things as, well, let's pull them up because, we like receipts here. We like receipts. Wow, this kind of opens the door to certain things. So let's look, shall we, my friends? Let's look here. This is fun, isn't it? One sec. Let me find it for you. August 2nd, 2023. David Traub emails Gretchen Voss a link to Jennifer Coffendoffer's Twitter account. The party we discussed, from David Traub to Gretchen Voss, August 2nd, 2023. Why would he be doing that? Why would he be doing that? And then what I find almost even more interesting because you remember then at some point, August 25th is when Marcy releases this hostage video, right? This has got to stop. Right. The subject of that email was request for Adam Lally. Nightline ABC News request for Assistant District Attorney Adam Lally. That's interesting. Because let's bring that back for a second. Let's see, from David Traub to Gretchen Voss, August 2nd, regarding ABC News request for Assistant District Attorney Adam Lally. What does she have to do with ABC News? I don't know. The party we discuss, and then sends Jennifer Coffendoffer's Twitter account to Gretchen Voss. And then August 25th, Marcy releases his hostage video. And then David Traub sends an email to Gretchen Voss on the 25th, or this is from Gretchen to David Traub regarding statement on Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Says, thanks, David. Well, there's my story. Sometimes being a magazine with a long lead time really stinks. I'm sure this will bring a great deal of relief to the witnesses, though. Is she talking about the hostage video? And then says, we don't have Traub's side. This is only Gretchen Voss's side. Well, yes, it's not about me, but yeah, the timing stinks. LOL. And please on the burger, like they were going to go out for a burger. Then on August 27th, this is the meat of it all. David Traub emailed Gretchen Voss about being careful with language. Take a look at this. After the hostage video came out, he's telling her, she must have sent him a copy of the article. And this is from David Traub to Gretchen. Gretchen, I would like to be careful with language here. He was not on the scene where John was found on Fairview. Look, he italicizes Fairview. And we know he's talking about Proctor here. Because we know. He deployed and was on scene at the police station, italicized. He deployed to and was on scene at the hospital, italicized. He was on scene in Dighton, which is in a different font and made larger. He was not on scene at 34 Fairview that day. She must have put in her report, as all of the investigative materials say, that Michael Proctor went to 34 Fairview. And now he is, I don't know, spinning a narrative, telling her what to report about. This is very problematic. None of your business, one of my favorite usernames. So this is what PR people do, right? They spin. Wait till you see where he's working now, because I found that too. What a worm, telling her to be careful. I would like to be careful with language here, says Stephen. What a worm. Justin says Gretchen doesn't have to turn over anything because this order violates her due process constitutional rights, but not in Massachusetts, Justin. They do not recognize, they're one of a handful of states that do not recognize a reporter privilege. There's no journalistic shield. I know if you're coming from another state other than Massachusetts, I live in New York. That's wild to me. Off the record means off the record. Many a journalist have gone to jail and sat there for a long time to to not turn over their sources and or materials. He was not on scene at 34 Fairview that day. When the South Boston barracks relayed the call to us of the matter, he and his sergeant shoveled out their personal vehicles and drove to the Canton police station. The initial responders were no longer at the Fairview scene, and neither was the victim. Is this guy spinning a narrative or what? And this is the narrative that every single Proctor, Buchanan, this is the narrative that they told on the stand. This is going all the way back to August. Remember, this trial did not start until like April 2024. This was their story, and they were going to stick to it. And they were going to make sure that despite what Gretchen Voss may have found in her investigative journalism, looking at the actual police reports, this is what he wanted her to report. When the South Boston barracks relayed the call to us of the matter, he and his sergeant shoveled out their personal vehicles and drove to the Canton police station. The initial responders were no longer at the Fairview scene, and neither was the victim. Okay, I'm going to break from this for a second to say, and neither was anybody guarding the scene or securing the scene or monitoring or roping off the scene or keeping the scene secure. At the station, they gathered information and took possession of the phone that was found under John. Again, very specific. They took possession of the phone at the station. The phone was found under John. They then traveled together in the sergeant's personal vehicle because it has a four-wheel drive. Then they went to a private home where they spoke to witnesses. This is wild. If you guys haven't watched the Las Vegas Cops, who I absolutely love, I had the opportunity to meet them recently and spend time with them and spoken to them after since, and they're amazing. And they have done videos on this where they're like, they're flabbergasted. They're like, what do you mean? The lead investigator, Michael Proctor, never went to 34 Fairview that day. Are you ducking kidding me? That is the first thing that we would do. And then they go to a private home where they spoke to witnesses. They went to Jen McCabe's house where Brian Albert was hiding upstairs in her bedroom. And then it says, after those interviews, they went to the hospital to speak to the doctors, collect effects, view the body, etc. But Reed had left the hospital by that time. David Traub is spinning the Commonwealth narrative at least since August of 2023, if not before that, and telling this reporter what to write. Because the first draft of her article must have said something else. And now, let's see the first draft of that article. Let's see the first draft of that article, and let's see what she wrote initially, and let's see what it is that the spokesperson for Norfolk County DA's office has told her to change. Based on what they then knew, they traveled to Dighton, then followed the tow truck back to Canton PD, where there was a bay to store and process the car. If you want to discuss further, XOXO. Based on what they then knew, what did they then know? They didn't go to the scene. All they knew, apparently, from what he's telling Gretchen Voss, the reporter who's reporting on this for Boston Magazine, is what they learned from the witnesses at their own home. Jennifer McCabe, Matt McCabe, Brian Albert, and whoever else was there, I forget now. Speaking to the doctors at the hospital They're collecting of the phone. Let's see. He's saying that when they shoveled out their car and went to the Canton PD, that's when they took possession of John O'Keefe's phone. They haven't even seen the vehicle. But based on what they then knew, because of what Jen McCabe had told them, whatever they found on the phone, whether or not they could open the phone, and was speaking to the doctor and the ER doctor, then they decide they're going to go to Dighton and snatch that car. Without even knowing, without even seeing any damage to the car, without even, maybe the fix was in. You think? Huh. John Monagle says BS on Yuri and Proctor having to shovel out their cars. There wasn't enough snow at that point. Well, good on Gretchen, because then she writes back to David following this email. That was August 27th. And now this is 29th of August. She says to David Traub, remember, my friends, all of this is fodder for cross-examination. And, maybe a FOIL request for all of David Traub's emails to Gretchen Voss. I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes you better want what you wish for when you go around making motions like this. This is from Gretchen Voss on August 29th to David Traub, and it's regarding the statement on Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. And Gretchen says to David, thank you, David. I did think Proctor was on scene at Fairview that morning, but you're saying that he was not at 34 Fairview at all that day. That is helpful. Can you let me know the most specific and very latest on black box info? And it looks like he just kind of typed his answers in here, I think, and then sent it back. That's what it looks like, because it's in a different font and it's in a different color. The CARS, the Collision Analysis and Reconstruction section of the state police report, has been turned over to the defense. They have requested the raw data to have another analysis and requested that their analysis be able to communicate with CARS. Their analyst be able to communicate with CARS. The only content from the report that has been discussed in filings is the portion you are aware of, with language about traveling in reverse without specific speed or distance released. Wonder if they turned over more to her than that was in filings. Did they give Gretchen Voss? Did David Traub give Gretchen Voss additional black box information that had not been discussed in public court filings? I have questions. Gretchen says, also, where exactly do things stand with Karen's phone? David Traub says, defense has had the data in the phone since March. The taint team needed to segregate out privileged information and has now produced the redacted portion to us. Then she says, and finally, trying to give some sort of sense when a trial might happen. I know that we don't know, but would it be safe to say a trial may not happen for a year? And then he responds, the Commonwealth is interested in a trial date as soon as possible, but it's unrealistic to think it would happen before 2024. She says, thanks again. We go to press next week, but finishing up the long process now. My amazing fact checker may be reaching out in the next few days. Thanks, Gretchen. Then September 27th, she publishes her article. And then, in a weird twist of events, Mafia Massel, aka Kate Peter, aka Not So Confidential Informant, tweets this in November 10th, 2023, after the article was published. They've never been to dinner. LOL. I've had dinner with Gretchen, and I can assure you we're not banging. She's a talented writer, an honest and fair reporter, and a good person. That's why she gets work in major publications. Okay. So in my opinion, all this stuff is kind of fodder for cross-examination on Gretchen Voss. And then Mafia Masshole, again, the family spokesperson for the Alberts and McCabe's, and I don't know if she's the family spokesperson for the O'Keefe's, says in another tweet in January 2024, Gretchen Voss is fearless. More people should take note. And then there's a photograph in here of Gretchen Voss actually attending that rolling rally. Can anybody confirm that? The cross-examination of Gretchen Voss is going to be explosive. There have been reports of perhaps some hallucinogens happening during maybe that dinner with that person or some other time. Some rumblings of that. And then Jennifer Coffendorfer on November 28th tweeted this. Remember, Gretchen Voss had been sent her information. For those wanting to know what happened to hashtag John O'Keefe from a neutral party, please read the article below. The notes and raw footage of this author's interviews with Karen Reed are being sought by the prosecution. So she's linking the Boston Magazine article of Gretchen Voss, calling her a neutral party. And this was just November 28th of this year. Right. Kate Ann says, LOL, Gretchen Voss is fearless on the same day she objected to releasing her notes and recordings because she's scared. Brandy says, yes, Gretchen Voss was at the rolling rally. Again, I think we're in the twilight zone here. Kind of, maybe, sort of. We always are, but maybe even more so than we initially thought. Could it be? Moving on to the next document. Read. That doesn't make sense because if that email was written from Traub in August 2023, they had already charged her with murder too, based on that fact that she hit him in reverse. Yeah. The narrative continues to spin. There's a glitch in the matrix. There's a glitch in the matrix, Stacey. A big glitch. Here's the scrabble on just take that away. Put this up, and then we're going to talk about the podcast. This is the order, or it's actually the motion for records. So this is the motion the Commonwealth made for the keeper of the records to Boston 25. And this was the Ted Daniel interview of Mr. and Mrs. Reed and Nathan Reed. And in that motion, the Commonwealth wanted all of the outtakes from Ted Daniel's interview and all of the cutting room floor stuff and everything that he had on that, all video recordings. This is what they wanted. Written or recorded statements of William Reed, Janet Reed, and Nathan Reed, including all video recordings and any interview notes or memorialized statements made or adopted by William Reed, Janet Reed, or Nathan Reed. And the judge hand wrote on this motion on December 5th, just 3 days ago. After hearing and review of the pleadings, I find that the Commonwealth has met its burden of establishing good cause pursuant to Commonwealth v. Lampron. The motion is allowed. So they're going to get all of that as well. And then I guess perhaps Ted Daniel will be a witness. That'll be interesting. It's also important to note, I'm going to say it a little bit louder for those in the back, the defense did not oppose this motion either. They didn't oppose it. They did not oppose it. It was not opposed. It wasn't opposed. So there's that. Chilling effect. The chilling effect on reporters everywhere in Massachusetts because nobody's going to want to talk to you. And if you want to like proceed with your careers, then I suggest maybe perhaps you go to a state where you will actually be protected under the law. Just saying. Kathleen says, sorry, I meant boss squashing a subpoena to testify should she receive. Oh, you mean they could quash? Yeah, they could move to quash a subpoena. I don't know what their grounds would be. And none of that stuff is coming in unless she gets on the stand, Kathleen. So thank you for clarifying. And for the 5. Kim says the Commonwealth only asked for correspondence between Karen Reed and Voss, no other witnesses. So that stuff won't be turned over then, right? No, but the defense could ask for it, right? And because David Traub is a public official, all of his emails are subject to FOIA rules, or FOIA rules as they call it. So anybody could request that, right? And then I'm sure that the defense has done their due diligence and they have lots of stuff, and who knows what the FBI's turned over, but therefore they can use all of this stuff to impeach Gretchen Voss on the witness stand. See how that works? Latina says, I'm sure Yannetti told Voss, Steve Scanlon went to them and told him about the injuries that no one knew yet. Is Hank ready to tell the jury that? Right. More stuff. More fodder for Cross. Dewey. Hi, Dewey. Thanks for the 5. Can we call it pirouetting a narrative now? Oh, I love that. I'll allow it. They're pirouetting a narrative. Well done. Well done, my friend. Well done, Dewey. Hi, Amanda. Thanks for the 5. Happy Sunday. Thanks for covering. Also, love cop daddies. XO from Michigan. Thank you. Jerry sends me a matcha latte and says, how the duck is your memory so impeccable? You're so smart. Thank you. Thanks, Jerry. I don't know, stuff about this case sort of, oh, I didn't say your name, little robot that came on my screen. Thanks, Amanda. I don't know, with regard to this case, like a lot, I remember so much of it, but then there's some of it that you guys help me out on, and that's why you're so collaborative here, and I love you so much. Our cupcake crew, clean and classy. Thank you, Melanie Moss. Thank you, Joseph Kane, and thank you also Linda from Scotland. Hi, mate. Good on ya. Joseph paid $2 just to say hi to Linda from Scotland. Hello. All right, let's get to it. Love Shack says, FYI, Gretchen Voss is very much in tight with Kate Peter and other blue shirt trolls. Like Phelps, she presented herself as unbiased and then used only the negative commentary. A lot of people think that. Scott says Voss was a Trojan horse, beguiling to Karen Reed initially. Then she showed her true colors. Thank you, Scott, for your opinion as well. Just see if I can find that receipt. So this was very interesting to me. I did not know this. I was not aware of this, but apparently here's a photo of, it says Gretchen Voss is pictured attending the July 22nd Rolling Road Rally. So there's that. I mean, photos don't lie, right? The phone doesn't lie. Remember Adam Lally saying that? The phone doesn't lie. The phone does not lie. Here's something else I found that I thought was interesting. And it wasn't behind a paywall, surprisingly. So remember David Traub? Well, this was the 3rd. Today is what did we say today was again? The 8th. This is as of December 3rd. Ex-Norfolk DA spokesperson spokesman lands a job at Reagan PR. David Traub, who just quit as spokesman for Norfolk DA's office, is joining Reagan Communications. Reagan, Regan. The Herald has learned that Traub will be a vice president of news operations for the Boston-based public relations company. He joins David Procopio, who left as spokesman for the Massachusetts State Police to join Reagan. Well, that's interesting. Oh, wait a second. So the spokesman for the MSP and the spokesman for the Norfolk DA's office both quit to go join this PR firm at the same time. Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Both of them were tired of putting out fires at their respective places of employment. That's kind of wild. Traub said last month he was leaving DA Michael Morrissey's side because, quote, it was just time to go. It was just time to go. He did not comment about the Karen Reed murder case, the Sandra Birchmore murder case, the $200,000 Canton police office audit, the dysfunctional state police officers assigned to the DA's office, and the prosecution of blogger Aidan Turtleboy Carney. Traub was also a reporter working for the Metro West Daily News in Framingham before heading over to the DA's job. Well, there's that. Am I the first one to break this story? Because this came out on the 3rd, and when I just searched up his name, it came up in my as such Google searches. So I don't know if anybody already knew that. I don't know if anybody's reporting on it, because God knows I don't have time to watch anybody else's coverage, because I barely have time to do my own coverage. Yeah, so is Reagan Communications like the retirement farm for the former Massachusetts PR guys? I mean, now I kind of got to click on their thing and see what it says that they do. Well, we're here, so, you know. Here's their website, Reagan Communications Group. We empower your brand's voice. It's kind of like an advertising firm. One agency, all services, results focused. Public relations, digital marketing, branding. Featured projects, Big Brothers and Sisters of Connecticut, Steamship Authority, credit unions, the Mystic Aquarium. Well, you can, if you're interested in this, you can go to their website. It's regancomm.com. Here's some of the partners that they work with over there. Here's a union, the Teamsters, Local Union 25, Mandarin Oriental Hotel Group, Boston Arts Academy, Boston Arts Foundation, Sullivan Tire, Franklin, New Balance. So very, I thought, interesting. Huh. All right. Wow. I mean, as we sit here, we come across more and more and more stuff. Right? Okay, let's talk about the podcast. For those of you who have watched the podcast, for those of you who have not watched the podcast, there's a podcast. There's a podcast that is called 34 Fairview Road. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you find your podcasts. It is written by, it was scripted and voiced by a man by the name of M. William Phelps. M. William Phelps apparently has written more than 50 books. He initially was set up to do this podcast in conjunction with Aidan Carney, aka Turtle Boy. Coincidentally, they both have the same manager. This is wild to me. They both have the same talent man. It's not, you're not really watching it. It's an audio podcast, and you don't need to waste your time. You don't need to waste your time, because I'm here to talk about it with you. You don't need to watch it. Apparently, Aidan Carney is getting something like 40% of the profits. But what I thought was so interesting about it is that those of you who are here likely know so much about the case, so much about the Karen Reed case, that if you were somebody who knew nothing about the Karen Reed case and you tried to listen to this podcast, you would still know nothing about the Karen Reed case. It was wild. It was wild to me. It started off talking about some facts of the case. And if somebody can clarify this for me, I would love to know. If Mr. Phelps, I don't know what first name he goes by, M. William, I don't know. I don't know. Did he watch the trial? Did he actually watch the trial, or did he rely on people to tell him what had happened in the trial? Like, I don't know. I can't tell. Audible. So, I don't even know if I can play portions of this to you, or if I'll get stricken, or if I just have to tell you from my notes what it says. My guess is that he did not watch the trial. Says Suzanne. A lot of people listen to it. Okay. He says that he has worked in the true crime genre for over 25 years. He's written something like 50 books. And right away, like in the beginning of every podcast, it says executive producer Matt Valentinus, which is wild to me. Matt Valentinus is the talent manager for Phelps and for Aidan Carney. And he's also the executive producer of this podcast, which does nothing but, as we get to it a little further on, trash Aidan Carney. This is a hit piece on Aidan Carney. This is part of the I Hate Aidan Carney playlist. And it's wild. It's wild because there's really, if the purpose of your podcast was to make a podcast for John O'Keefe, justice for John O'Keefe and all that, this is anything. This goes on so many tangents about gossip and people who don't even know the players in this case, giving him extensive interviews. And it turns into an I Hate Aidan Carney podcast. And the fact that this guy, Matt Valentinus, who also was apparently a lawyer and a talent manager, represented both of them, puts both of them together to do this, and then it is executive producer, is like unethical would be the least thing that I could say about it, the kindest thing that I could say about it. It's nothing but a hit piece. Falconara says, yes, he said she was innocent based on the trial in July. It's wild. Let me just pull up the cover of this so you can at least see what it looks like in case you want to go look for it. Hang on. Got to kind of figure out where the hell I am on this. And like the titles of the episodes are wild too. It's like false pretenses, devil's advocate. So this is what the thumbnail looks like. I'm a Spotify girl, so this is on Spotify, and this is the cover of it. It's audio only. 34 Fairview Road, false pretenses. Now, he says in his shtick that in doing this podcast, he has over 100 hours of interviews on tape. Well, we just learned that there is no journalistic privilege in Massachusetts. Imagine what could be in those 100 hours of interviews. Exculpatory material for Karen Read? Maybe. Guess what? There's a lot of Boston College law students apparently working for the defense team now. Give them something to do. Give them 100 hours of interviews to sift through and listen to. See what they could possibly find. Sunflower Day says, and that Valentino guy knows Brennan. Huh, I don't know anything about that, but that's interesting. Well, there's 100 hours of audio recordings. Food for thought. Phelps says that he has worked in the true crime genre for over 25 years and he has yet to come across a case like Karen Reed. Really? You've yet to come across like Karen Reed? And I think his justification for that is he has never seen a case where witnesses have been harassed so viciously on the internet. I mean, that's what he's saying. Because all of the people that he talked to, who are like spokespeople for the family, apparently, are telling him about all of this horrific, harassment that these witnesses have endured. And I can't speak to the truth or veracity of that. But what I can say is that, does this man know nothing about other cases like Sebastian Rogers, like Madeline Soto, other cases where YouTubers and other people have been sued by family members of victims for being accused of committing crimes against their own children? Has he not heard of any of those cases? Because I would submit to you, some of those cases are on par with this one. And those of you who know, there's one person who's been very, very vocal in this case on the cesspool of Twitter about me, about other YouTube creators who just talk about the fact that John O'Keefe did not get hit by a car, who has a $500,000 judgment against her for doing that exact same kind of thing, harassing somebody's family in a true crime case. And did you interview some of these people? Guess not. So, episode 1, a little basic, neutral. Episode 2, a little neutral, a little basic. I can't tell from this episode 2 whether he interviewed Kerry Roberts or not, because it's unclear. He says, some of his audio clips are taken from the trial. Some people wouldn't speak to him. Like, I think the McCabe's and the Alberts would not speak to him. And the reason for that, did any of you happen to catch on JFK channel, I think it's called JFK, his channel, when Kate Peter called in, like randomly called into that show and was like talking for about 2 hours on the JFK show? And she says during that interview, and I'm not going to play any portion of it, but I'm going to tell you can go watch it if you want, that, the McCabe's and the Alberts could not speak to him because they are under contract with a different production company. They have an exclusive deal with them. They are not allowed to talk to anybody else. Well, shouldn't that be discoverable? Not so confidential informant? Shouldn't the defense be able to find out what production company that is that these people, these percipient witnesses in the Karen Reed retrial, have a contract with, and what interviews have been done and what they have told these reporters? Because again, no journalistic privilege in Massachusetts, right, folks? Imagine what could have been said during those interviews. That could be exculpatory. So I don't know if he interviewed Kerry Roberts, but Kerry Roberts, he points out that, Karen called her that morning and said, John is dead, John is dead. Well, what's interesting to many of us who have been following this case for a very long time is that, did she really say that? Because when Kerry Roberts picks up the phone after that phone call and calls Canton PD, which coincidentally, Sergeant Goody, the guy who shot home, shot back, got his leaf blower, came back to the scene, started blowing snow around, gave Gallagher the leaf blower. He happened to be like on desk duty that morning when Kerry Roberts called, and he took that call, and we've listened to transcripts of that call. Kerry Roberts wasn't all freaked out and said, his girlfriend called me and said he's dead. He was hit by a plow. I don't know what to do. She's very calm in that phone call. She didn't say anything like that. She says, his girlfriend called me and, there may have been like eating him home and, he maybe passed. I just thought maybe he passed out on someone's couch. And like, that's the contents of that phone call. So I have some questions about whether Karen really said, John's dead. John's dead, and was freaking out about it. Because wouldn't she have said that to Good when she made that call? I don't know. I still have questions about that. I still have so many questions. And then in episode 2, Phelps says, Jen McCabe says that Karen said, did I hit him? Could I have hit him? So I feel like, okay, he's kind of going down the right path here. And then he points out that Jennifer McCabe and Carrie Roberts, I think, both testified during the trial that they testified that after they got to Meadows, they got out of the car and Karen showed them the broken taillight that she had been talking about. And he says, all of this is caught on Ring camera, which Jen says on the stand, yet that's not what the Ring camera video showed for those of us who watched the trial, right? So I kind of think, all right, this guy kind of gets it. He kind of gets it. Then he says that, and this is still episode 2, that the deputy chief across the street has a Ring camera, and we know it's Kelleher, pointing directly in the line of sight where John is located. And he says something like he's potentially sitting on a video of the incident. And then the cliffhanger for episode 2 was when the Haas Long to Die in Cold search was made by Jennifer McCabe, allegedly at 2:27 a.m., then she deletes 2 screenshots and deletes that search. So I'm like, okay, maybe this guy gets it. Maybe he gets it. Maybe he's really doing some investigative reporting here. And maybe he's going to report on the things that are at issue, right? The things that are in controversy here from the trial and other things. I'm looking at somebody changed their screen name to M. William Phelps. Lies. Yeah. He didn't watch the trial. Thank you for your super chat. And then Dewey says, Phelps pretty much said on the Turtle Boys show that he knows more than all the Turtle writers who did watch the whole trial. I don't know. I didn't watch that. I didn't watch that show, but he did go on there in the beginning when he was promoting the podcast before it started dropping, right? Meatball Marcy's Sketty Stain. Well done. Thanks for the fitty. 3 to 4 weeks ago, I sent an email to Phelps and saw an 800 number, gave my personal feedback, and then received missed calls, voicemails, and texts from Valentinus and Phelps. Valentini also sent me a screenshot of someone's social media with my name trying to intimidate me. Well, that's whack. Wow. Thank you. Don't call, I guess, right? Don't call. Episode 3 kind of takes a little turn here, except for that at the beginning of episode 3. He actually says, I find it extremely unusual that Kelleher didn't come out of his house. Didn't he say that? Are my notes wrong? And then he says, Jennifer McCabe, between 5:33 and 8:50 a.m., makes 18 calls and then deletes them all. Like, okay, maybe he still gets it. Maybe he's still going to try and point out some things. And then he tells the audience, Mr. Phelps, that his sister-in-law was murdered when she was 5 months pregnant. And that is horrific and tragic. And then shortly after his sister-in-law was murdered when she was 5 months pregnant, his brother died. And then he, Mr. Phelps, adopted his brother's children, which puts him in the shoes of Officer John O'Keefe. And he says this twice during this podcast. The first time, according to my notes, which, yeah. He also adopted his brother's kids after his brother's wife, who was 5 months pregnant, was murdered, and then his brother died. It's too coincidental to even. Oh, Nurse Kim, you want a wrench? Oh, I mean, look, I'm happy to give you a wrench, girl. It's like, how Will is, and he gives out wrenches to his friends, and I'm like, but, enjoy. I'm like, it's so much pressure. It's so much pressure with that wrench, but, I think you have it now, so thanks, girl. Love you. So it's kind of a strange coincidence, but you can't leave your personal experiences at home when you're reporting on a case like this, right? And maybe that's why he became interested in this case, because he saw the story and he's like, "Oh my God, I did the same thing. I adopted my brother's kids, and so did he." And we all come into everything with our own personal experiences, and it's hard to put that aside. And then he actually points out at one point during that episode, he questions whether Karen's parents triggered her being sectioned so that Karen did not have to answer any questions from the police. Like, huh? And then to close out that episode 3, which is now where we are taking a sharp turn, he says the Canton Police Department goes to One Meadows near 8:15 a.m. and the footage from that dash cam shows that it is absolutely clear that the upper section of the red taillight is gone. And I'm like, what? Because I remember that day that we saw that video in a trial, and I'm like, okay, what the what? Like, what are we supposed to be seeing here? You couldn't see a damn thing. Anybody remember that? Episode 4 is ironically titled "Details Matter," and for some reason I don't have any notes on that episode. But it's also important to say that his production company is called Mom's Basement Media. Thank you, Diane, for gifting 5 memberships. I appreciate you so much, and for all of you who were randomly gifted by YouTube, welcome. Look at Meatball Marcy, Sketty Staying got a membership, and another Melanie got a membership. There's a lot of Melanies on this channel. That's the best name ever. Gen Xers, Jen Willow, Bevan, and Melissa's house. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Then episode 5, Natalie comes in and he bleeps out her name for some reason. It doesn't bleep out anybody else's name pretty much during the course of this 9 episode. How many episodes is this going to be? Does anybody know how many episodes this is going to be? Um, I may have to play this to myself because I gotta clarify this note to myself. So just talk amongst yourselves for a second. This is episode 5. Episode 5. See, this is the problem when jurors are told that they can only rely on their notes and they can't have any readbacks, is that even my own notes to me I wrote them like during the week that I've been prepping this, and my own notes are kind of unclear to me. So when I hear that jurors have to rely on their own notes, they could be, fighting for something that they think they heard during the trial, and then they could be completely wrong and they're not allowed to ask for a readback. So I just listen to this myself before I repeat it and I don't want to be wrong. Episode 5, and this is at 9. Okay, let's I don't know if you can you hear the audio on this? Let me see if you can. And I'm not sure again if he's talking about this being like his personal opinion. So this is why I wanted to roll this back for you. This is okay.
Line with what one might consider to be evidence left behind after an SUV struck a man who had just gotten out of that same vehicle. In other words, that area there by the road O'Hara describes fits into a narrative of a collision taking place in the same location. I don't think that is a difficult circumstance to believe. The contention from the Free Karen Reed movement is all of this evidence has been planted underneath the snow during a blizzard, allegedly by Brian Tully and Michael Proctor, the lead supervisor and lead investigator, both of whom had stopped at the Canton Police Department Sallyport where Karen's SUV has just arrived. So, in that line of thinking, all those cops conspired to smash pieces of the taillight on Karen's SUV, drive those pieces over to 34 Fairview, bury them underneath all that snow, all within about 30 minutes with scores of other cops looking on.
It's not impossible that the vehicle could have been
Oh, and then his one of his many experts on this is Kevin Lenahan, Yellow Cottage Cheese. So that's one of those interviews contained within the hundreds of hours of videos. Another person who comes into this, right? Stephanie, hang on a second. If the collision took place on the road, where's the stuff on the road? There wasn't. John Monaco said, who said it was under the snow? There were no other cops there until 5:30, says Jane. LA says, for someone unbiased, he sounds very angry and emotionally involved. And this is only episode number 5. Moving on to episode number 6. He says, at one point he says, and this is what my notes say, I am of the opinion that this was definitely a motor vehicle accident. He says that. Okay. Then at some point in episode 6, he says that he first met with Aidan Carney, Turtle Boy, on August 5th of 2024, and that he gave Aidan Carney a hard drive to put all of his documents, interviews, and information on the case on this hard drive. I'm sorry, in what world did you think that was going to happen? Did you think that was going to happen because you guys are both Matt Valentinus's clients, and so therefore he was going to do you a friendly and hand over all his investigative materials to you? And then he says, and then he goes on to say, but instead, he only gave me a 90-page theory of the conspiracy that was never proved in a court of law. He goes on to say, talk about Jessica Hyde. He talks about Jessica Hyde. He said, Jessica Hyde has been an expert in the field of whatever for decades. Decades, he says. Hold on. I mean, I don't have the timestamp on that, so I can't play it. She has dedicated her professional life to understanding technical data in cell phones and is one of the go-to experts in the country in this field. I'm sorry, what? I'm sorry, what? Jessica Hyde got her master's in like 2016, I think. How has she been in this field for decades? Do we need to go over the definition of decade? Huh. I remember her testimony. Do you? That's where he starts losing me. Because, I mean, that's kind of basic. And then he says, on May 4th, May 4th of when? I don't even know. May 4th, like during the trial. Jessica Hyde was contacted by Tully through her website. Okay. All right. He then goes on to, shatter Richard Green's testimony by saying that Richard Green got it wrong. And Celebrite had to actually modify its software because of the misinterpretations he made in his affidavit. Yeah, he said that. He did. He said it. That's like episode 6. Let's see. Can we get to the next episode? Like what? Oh, episode 6 is entitled, "Oh, wait, the dog did it?" Oh, you did a vote, and Nurse Kim and I are definitely doing something together. It's just that we're both so busy that we, it's timing issue. Right, he said that Richard Green apologized to Lally for his incorrect opinion. Mm-hmm. Your dad said, Celebrite never changed his program. That's a barefaced lie. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Great way to support the channel, you guys. Great way. Doing all your shopping for the holidays. Just click on my link and shop through my link for your regular stuff. It helps the channel. Doesn't cost you anything more. Thank you, Scott, for putting that link up there. It's also in, I believe, the video description. Thank you, thank you, thank you. LA says a real journalist would have done what Vanity Fair did, have another expert look at it. Mm-hmm. Then he goes on to say, Jennifer McCabe never deleted any calls. Green misread the data because only 100 calls are saved and the rest are in a separate folder. Mm-hmm. That's what he says. This is episode 6. Yeah, let's see if I can find the 2010. I'm hearing like the Gilded Age. What? Okay, why am I getting I thought this is like some official Gilded Age podcast. No, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for this. That was so weird. I've never listened to a Gilded Age podcast in my life, although I do love that show very much. The music is so cheesy that I can't even. All right, hold on. All right. You can't hear this when it's off the screen, right? Only when it's on the screen? I don't know. Listen to this.
By 34 Fairview. He was beaten to death by the dog got involved.
My name is M. William Phelps. I'm an investigative journalist and the true crime author of close to 50 books. You might know me from my #1 Apple podcast hit, Paper Ghosts, and my weekly show, Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps.
Okay.
I've spent the past 25 years in the true crime genre and have yet to come across a case like the Commonwealth of Massachusetts versus Karen Reed. This is season 1.
Like, really? Nothing? JonBenet Ramsey? Nothing? Okay.
Of Crossing the Line with M. William Phelps presents 34 Fairview Road.
All right, listen to this part. This has to do with the Karen's arraignment.
One count of motor vehicle homicide by negligent operation of a motor vehicle, one count of leaving the scene of personal injury and death. These offenses taken place January 29, 2022 in the town of Canton.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm advising you pursuant to Mass General Laws, Chapter 276, Section 50.
Over that weekend of January 29th and 30th, and now into
This is when they upgraded the charges. This is the second arraignment.
Monday, January 31st, the Massachusetts State Police zeroes in on Karen Reed, their only suspect in the death of John O'Keefe. By
The
February
only suspect.
2nd,
Can you imagine? That's their only suspect. They never even looked for another suspect. They never even looked for one. They decided that they were going to pin it on the girl within the first 16 hours.
Karen is standing in a Stoughton, Massachusetts courtroom, facing a judge and several serious criminal charges: manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, and leaving the scene of a motor vehicle collision causing a death. Wearing a mask because of COVID restrictions, Karen appears rough and tired with dark bags under her eyes.
Wouldn't you?
She seems agitated and antsy. And
Wouldn't you?
if we are judging a book by its cover here for the sake of argument, which has been done a lot in this case,
Let's not.
the title written across that cover in large font on this day would be, "I am guilty."
I am guilty?
At this time, the general feeling within the court, scant media.
The book would say on its cover, "I am guilty." And she's wearing a mask. He just said she's wearing a mask. Are you ducking kidding me? Wow. Yeah. He just said she's wearing a mask. Judging a book by its cover, this book would say, "I am guilty." Huh? Yeah. And then, because it gets better, and I'm not going to subject you to the voice anymore. I'm just going to tell you what my notes say. He says at one point that Unintended had indicated that Karen had had her colon completely removed in 2009. He plays that part of the body cam footage where they upgrade the charges, and she says, we're all in on the same joke, right? John was pulverized and my taillight was cracked, and Colin and Brian beat him up in the house, and called Karen at one point a calculator. She's very calculating. He says that the reason she said that stuff, he says to I think it's Buchanan, right, who's behind the desk with the body cam on. He says she simply states this information to a police officer on body cam, knowing that it will go up the chain from there. He questions why she would share it with the police at this time. And yet 5 minutes earlier in the podcast, he said, why didn't she bring it up at her first arraignment in February? Because she didn't know the information then? Then he's got some unnamed sources in there who seem very, very, very jealous. There was one part in there where there was like some unnamed person who said that she went into the bathroom during the trial and Jennifer McCabe was in there and she got like this really weird vibe, like she was some really mean cheerleader and I took her back to high school, and it was like really weird. That was in one of the earlier episodes though. And then goes on in this episode to, keep in mind Colin Albert is a 17-year-old child. And then he says, oh, hold on. Well, I think I might have to play this part just so I just don't mischaracterize it. I don't know why when I played it on my phone, I have certain timestamps, and then when I play it back on the desktop, there's different timestamps. Maybe they put their commercials in at different times every time, and it screws up my timing of this. That could be. Okay. You know what? I got this right. Okay, hang on. All right. Because this is in time. This is about the dog. So
As Karen is preparing to fight for her freedom, she is obsessively scrolling around Facebook and other social media sites and screenshotting as many photos as she can from Michael Proctor and even his wife's Facebook pages. But she is also imploring others to do the same. During this time, a conversation between Karen and her mother reportedly takes place after Karen's mother sees several autopsy photos of John O'Keefe's arm.
What? Has anyone ever heard anything about this conversation between Karen and her mother? Listen more.
Photos a friend of Karen's told me she made sure Turtle Boy got copies of and helped Karen put out into the public domain. Allegedly, after seeing those photos, Karen's mother tells Karen that she believes the injuries on John's arm are consistent with an animal attack, not being struck by a motor vehicle.
What? What? Where did this come from? Karen's friend said this, and he's reporting this like it's fact. Like Karen's mother and Karen had a conversation, and Karen's mother is the one who said this was caused by an animal attack, because they are from an animal, but photos were published in court documents. That's not like she's talking about. But listen, then he goes on to say this.
And just to be clear, no canine DNA has ever been found in any of John's wounds.
The wounds were never tested for canine DNA, you dipduck. Just to be clear, no canine DNA was ever found in any of John's wounds. I'm sorry. Are there tissue samples out there that were taken that we're unaware of? What? The wounds were never tested. The tissue samples were never preserved. And this is misinformation to the 10th power. Are you kidding? Are you ducking kidding me? Because people who haven't watched the trial now are going to be like, oh, there was no dog DNA in his wounds. They never tested the wounds. No, they swabbed the clothing with one Q-tip around all of the, maybe some or all of the shirt that was kept in someone's trunk for God knows how long. This is atrocious. And listen to this. Wait, it gets better.
And it would be impossible for John O'Keefe to have been bitten and scratched by a dog without canine DNA being present. Not to mention, there are no underbites on the opposite side of that arm.
There are no underbites on the opposite side of that arm. Did you listen to Dr. Marie Russell's testimony, sir? And he's spewing this as if it's fact. I don't think he couldn't have watched the trial.
Indicating a dog clamped down, which dogs always do when they attack.
No.
So,
no, sir. No, dogs do not always clamp down when they attack, because an untrained dog will drag on your arm, especially when a person's trying to pull their arm away. Go watch the show that I did with Garrett Wang and educate yourself, perhaps. I mean, are you kidding me?
This notion that John was attacked by a dog is just false, scientifically speaking. It is all speculation. Here's John O'Keefe's friend, John Jackson.
Okay. Then he goes to talk to this guy. Okay. So that is one of the most important parts that I want to play for you. And the rest of it is ridiculousness. And here's another thing that I found real interesting. So then he talks about, you know, in order for this story to be believable about Karen, like cracking her taillight by backing into John's Traverse, there is, you know, there's a, she would have had to plow into the Traverse due to a 2-inch lip, which is impossible. Again, no source for this information. He's just like, it's impossible. It's impossible to him. Because again, he's never seen any case in his however many years of reporting, like the Karen Reed case, in which people were so harassed. Victims were so harassed. Then he talks about, then there's another guy who he talks to, I think he said his name is like Brendan Kane or something, that he says he was close with John O'Keefe for over 40 years. And then he relies on this witness to tell us the times of the phone calls to the parents, which is completely wrong. And yet the cell phone records are readily available to anybody who wants to look at them on the internet. So he relies on this person, Brendan, to give him this information that he reports as accurate. And then he said, because he said that there was 2 calls after 1 a.m. to her parents and 1 call at 4:40 a.m. to her parents. Like, where does he even come up with those times? Did you even look? Did you even try? Did you even try? And then he says, he uses this guy Brendan as his expert on the cars making contact, Karen's car making contact with John's car in the driveway. And then he says at his cliffhanger on this one, he says that the WBZ TV station has a story on their website that law enforcement has evidence of Karen Reed in her SUV murdering her boyfriend, John O'Keefe, which we later find to come out was not true. Never happened. Nope. Never happened. Then he's got episode 7 entitled False Pretenses. And surprisingly, Yellow Cottage Cheese is his expert witness for this this episode, in which he says that this guy, Kevin Lenahan, is writing a book about the Karen Reed case. He's writing a book. Did anybody know that? I didn't know that. But apparently he's writing a book. And he says, and I quote, Phelps says, Phelps has never seen anything like the price the people like Lenahan have paid for speaking the truth as they see it. And then Lenahan goes on to talk about the food that he had sent to his house that wasn't paid for. I'm sorry, Mr. Phelps, have you taken a look out there on the cesspool of Twitter and seen the price that people who have said that John O'Keefe was not hit by a car have paid? Like me, like Brandy Churchwell, like other creators who are just out here on the internet talking about court documents, court testimony, police reports. Do you see the price that we've paid by these people who are good friends with these witnesses whose lives have been ruined? Have you seen that stuff? Because maybe you should have looked at the other side as well, sir, before you go out there and talk about how horrific this is. Because one of those people that you happened to interview, and you actually gave her real name, which I'm shocked by. He says witnesses have paid the biggest price, some of whom have spoken to him. Well, that's all discoverable now, isn't it? Better start getting those interviews ready. At 7 minutes and 25 seconds in, he says he spoke with a very close friend of the McCabe's, whose name is Carrie Lama. And Carrie Lama tells him that the McCabe's have been viciously attacked, and that's why they can't speak to him. But then their spokesperson, Kate Peter, said the reason they can't speak to him is because they have an exclusive deal with a different network. Carrie Lama has disappeared from the cesspool of Twitter. She's one of those people who like to trash me constantly, and I've got all the receipts on that too. She also happens to be a nurse, and he talks about how she's a nurse during this podcast. She's a nurse who apparently doesn't know anything about HIPAA or HIPAA laws, because she says she's known the McCabe's and the Alberts for decades. That the McCabe's have 4 kids and the Alberts have 5 kids. That all of the children are being relentlessly harassed and stalked as well. And then goes on to say this: all of the kids have had mental health struggles. Some have gone into inpatient programs, and some have gone to outpatient programs of mental health facilities. I'm sorry, what? Did you just broadcast to the, 50 people that are listening to this podcast? that some of the children who were relentlessly harassed, which I do not agree with in any way, shape, or form, by the way. I don't think anybody should be harassed at all. Did you just say that they've been to inpatient treatment for mental health struggles related to this case? Is that a HIPAA violation? Is that why you've disappeared from Twitter? Because the family wasn't happy that you said this to them about them? And then don't just take it from Carrie Lama, because on that same podcast of JFK that I told you about, when Kate Peter went on and talked to JFK or ranted at JFK for 2 hours, Kate Peter said at least 3 of the children have gone to inpatient mental health facilities because of this case. She said it too. What? So your family spokesperson, McCabe's and Alberts, is out there broadcasting your children's mental health inpatient facility stays? Are you kidding? HIPAA only applies when she's a treating nurse. I'm going to submit to you that she should know better, regardless. Regardless. It was in poor form and a horrible, horrible. And we talk about this all the time, how it's horrible that these children were dragged into this. And it's horrible that John's niece and nephew were brought in to testify in court against a woman that they loved, who was very generous to them and took them to Dunkin' Donuts and bought them nice things and nice clothes. And that how traumatic that would be for them. And now how they filed the civil suit and they made the niece a plaintiff in that civil suit, and how her entire mental health history is going to come into play during the civil case, because when you claim emotional injuries like intentional infliction of emotional distress, your entire mental health history comes into play and it's discoverable. And now you're dragging in the kids again. I'm horrified by it. I'm horrified by it. I strongly believe that is intentional to back the civil suit. Yeah, but there's only one kid who's a plaintiff in the civil suit. There's 2 other ones that they just doxed. For what? It may not be a HIPAA violation. I'm not saying that it's a HIPAA violation. I'm saying that as a nurse or someone who's in the medical field, you should just be very, very careful about putting other people's private information out there onto the internet, regardless. Regardless. Yeah, there's a moral code too, right? Isn't there? I'm not gonna split hairs over whether or not what she said was a HIPAA violation. I'm gonna split hairs by saying that as a nurse, she knows more than anyone how inappropriate it could be to put anybody's medical information out there, whether you treat them or not. Carrie Lama also went on to say during this interview, this portion of episode 7, that she's known the McCabes for decades. They've all been destroyed by this. Nicole has been destroyed by this. We replayed some of Nicole's testimony the other day when we were talking about Dr. Russell and Chloe and what Nicole knew about Chloe. And hang on one second. Okay. At one point, Phelps asks Carrie Lama, did you know Brian Albert? And then she kind of like has this little like fangirl moment over Brian Albert. Well, I didn't really know him, but I do know that he took down the Craigslist killer. And I do know that he was at the boat when the Boston Marathon bomber was apprehended. And yet he's intimidated by Aiden Carney. That's interesting. Then she goes on to talk about how she was at Jen McCabe's house for coffee recently, and that Matt McCabe was like running around the kitchen making coffee, and then he runs outside, and she said to Jen McCabe, "What are you doing?" And what is he doing? And Jen said, "Oh, every week he makes coffee for the trash man, and they talk outside for 15 minutes and have coffee together." pertinent portion of episode 7. Then at one point he said, at some point, Turtle Boy put out the dog whistle in October of 2024 for his people to attack Carrie Lama. Who put out the dog whistle for those people to attack people like me and Brandy Churchwell? I think I can guess. Goes on to talk about Turtle Boy's goal was to trash the experts and to cult-like. Anybody who says anything about Karen Reed is attacked and vilified, and their personal lives are put through hell. And then, wait, what episode are we on here? Episode 7. Sorry, I do have to play one more part for you because this is really big, and I think it was kind of glossed over a little bit. I have to get to episode 7 though, so they don't make it easy for me to get to episode 7 quickly. So hang on, talk amongst yourselves for a second. Sometimes you just gotta have receipts, right, my friends? You just gotta have receipts. Go on, episode 7 with your bad self. Let's see. Hang on. Hang on. Here it is. Here it is. Okay. All right. Listen to this, because I think this is a big deal. Episode 7.
Kids and adults.
It was my cousin Brian's birthday, so I went over to celebrate for
Talking
a little bit
about
with him.
34.
So they were celebrating Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday. According to testimony during Karen's 2024 trial, most of the women are upstairs, drinking, singing along to music, hanging out at the kitchen table, while the men are hanging out downstairs, drinking and likely discussing sports and maybe even their kids.
What? How many of you watched the trial with me? The women were in the kitchen, hanging around, drinking, listening to music, and dancing. And the testimony showed that the women were upstairs and the men were downstairs talking about sports, talking about things. No, the testimony did not say that. You know who might have said that? Some of the 100 hours of interviews of people that you were listening to, that you spoke with. Maybe you conflated what you thought the testimony was at trial, because now we know you did not listen to the trial at all, but somebody told you the men were downstairs. I'm going to play that back. Listen.
Karen's 2024 trial, most of the women are upstairs, drinking, singing along.
It was my cousin Brian's birthday,
Right, that's
so
his
I
trial
went over
testimony.
to
I don't think he
celebrate for a
interviewed
little bit
Colin,
with him.
so Listen.
So they were celebrating Brian Albert Jr.'s birthday. According to testimony during Karen's 2024 trial, most of the women are upstairs, drinking, singing along to music, hanging out at the kitchen table, while the men are hanging out downstairs, drinking and likely discussing sports and maybe even their kids.
Wow. Downstairs from the kitchen is what, my friends? What? The basement. Yeah, that's Colin's voice. That has nothing to do with this. I just rewound it too far. Nobody testified during the trial that the men were downstairs. Who told you that, Mr. Phelps? Who told you that? Where in your 100 hours of recorded videos or audios did you glean that information? How many witnesses told you that the people were in the basement? Because it wasn't from the testimony. And a lot of people thought when they first heard this, oh, that he's just wrong. He didn't watch the trial. Where did he get it from? Yep. Phelpsy said the quiet part out loud. So something is so funny, Auntie Bev. Most of the women, right? So which ones were downstairs? Yep. Yep. Very interesting, isn't it? He's got hundreds of hours of interviews. How many people told him the men were in the basement while the women were in the kitchen? Because they were very, very careful, Mr. Phelps, during testimony. So careful to say that nobody ever went in the basement and the guy never came in the house. There's also another portion of this where they play Colin's testimony. And this is when Phelps is trying to prove that Allie went and picked up Colin at a certain time based on their screenshotted text messages. And Colin says, I went to my friend's house, Mike's house. And then, she picked me up and she brought me over to my cousin, Bri, so I could say happy birthday. And then I just left. Where's Mike? Where's Mike? Is Mike available? Mike going to remember? Because there's a point where Colin says to Allie in this screenshotted text message that I don't have in front of me right now, you can come and get me now. And she's like, oh, I'm doing something else. I can come soon. Was she picking him up somewhere and driving him to Mike's? And then did she pick him up at Mike's sometime and then drive him over to, when she says, I'm here, does that necessarily mean I'm here at 34 Fairview? Or could that be I'm here at Mike's to get you to bring you over to your cousin's house to say happy birthday? We don't know because those screenshots were, I don't know, proctored completely. I don't know how that was ever admitted as evidence, by the way. Those screenshotted text messages, I don't know how that was ever admitted as evidence. And here's the other question that I've been asking myself for such a long time as I scream into my closet and you. Why did Lally call every single person who walked into 34 Fair, every single person who had nothing to say about really much of anything? Why did he do that? And here's a thought. He had to do that so that they would remain witnesses under the law in the persecution of Aiden Carney. Think about that for a minute. If they weren't called at trial, the argument can be made that, hey, they're not witnesses to anything. You didn't even call them at trial. And yet you're trying to prosecute him for intimidation of all of these witnesses. Is that why he called all of these people? If I was the prosecutor in this case, I never would have called all of those people. If the defense wanted them, let them call them in. Let them call them. Or if I needed to, I could call them back on rebuttal. There was no reason to have all of these people testify in nothing but defense of the McCabe's and the Alberts. That's all that it was. They ran defense the entire time in their case in chief. And they put all of these people on the stand to say that none of these people did it. Therefore, Karen must have done it. Process of elimination. Right? But the witness intimidation statute in Massachusetts is so overly broad that really, who the hell knows? It just came to me as I was listening to this saying, maybe that's why they called every single one of these people at trial, because he's got Aiden Carney has like charges against him by like at least 19 people who were involved in this. 17, 19, I don't know. Carrie Lama then goes on to talk about Colin's college football career, how that was ruined, and how hundreds of people have been ruined by, I guess, people who follow Turtle Boy. And then he goes on to say the end of episode 7, you know, people are squawking about why there was no search for any ring cams ever done around the area. And he says in his authoritative voice, there was no reason to search for any ring video. And then he goes on to say without authority that, you know, they can only film for 30 feet. Nothing would have been captured anyway. There was no reason for them to search for ring video. I submit to you, Mr. Phelps, and I don't know with the circumstances of your sister-in-law being murdered, and that is horrific. But if that kind of an investigation was done into your sister-in-law's murder and nobody even looked for ring camera footage, wouldn't you be outraged? I don't know. Then he goes on to say that WBZ had to retract that story about there being ring camera of the incident because years later, after no video has been produced, they had to retract that story. I think you can pretty much still find that story on WBZ's website. I don't know. Does anybody know whether or not that was actually really ever retracted? I don't think it was ever retractive, right? Thank you, Ruth Christie. Sometimes my mind runs off into the rabbit hole of Alice in Wonderland goodness. No retractions were made, says Turdad. If they took the story down, that's not the same as a retraction, right? Wouldn't a retraction be like, we're really sorry that we reported this and it wasn't true and therefore we're retracting it? No, there's no public retraction. Maybe it's probably still on the website. I'm not going to look for it now because I just don't have the time. But does it make you think? They made a statement about it, says Kim. Suzanne says, I don't recall any retractions. It's not retracted. It says Letteros by Bettero. Eisenberg says, I sure hope they call his sorry behind to the stand to explain how he knew the whereabouts of the basement boys. Well, we know it wasn't from the testimony. We know that because we actually watched the trial. Somebody slipped. That's what I think. Or was it a scrivener's error? But he's a good journalist, right? I mean, he obviously fact checks. He obviously like vets his sources, right? So how could he have possibly published that without having some evidence that the men were downstairs while the women were in the kitchen talking about sports and whatnot? Because I'm sure that he's thorough and I'm sure that he vets his sources and I'm sure that he vets his information. So there's that. Episode 8 goes on to say again that he conducted over 100 hours of recorded interviews. He goes on to disparage Alan Jackson a bit by saying that he represented Kevin Spacey and that he's a slick and high-priced LA-based attorney. He says Richard Green embarrasses himself on the stand and apologizes for the 227 search, which did not happen. I don't recall that happening. And he says at one point, liars generally lie about the big things and forget smaller, insignificant things. That's interesting. Carrie Lama is featured again in this episode, and she says, Karen thinks that everything is everybody else's fault. And she says that the first responders were being much too kind to her until her dad had her sectioned because she was screaming, did I hit him? Did I hit him? And then she says something about Sarah in the house. She said something like, Sarah is a nurse. I mean, I'm a nurse. I can't fathom why Jennifer McCabe would even lie for her brother-in-law, Brian, at all. Can't fathom it. At one point, he calls Karen Reed the Royal Queen of Canton. Really? The Royal Queen of Canton? Because she was an outsider in Canton. That's the reason this whole thing happened, in my opinion. And then he goes on to talk about the butt dials, and instead of talking about the absurdity of the butt dials between Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, he plays a crude description of the butt dials from Aidan Carney. And Nicole Albert's like, sexy time. And he does that a lot. He plays a lot of Turtle Boy's rants and horrible things that he said about people. And this is where the story obviously is going at this point. And then he says, 39 minutes in, depending on where the commercials fall in this thing, he says, Phelps said, I felt rage bubbling up in me as I knocked on Turtle Boy's door because I lost a pregnant family member to murder. And then he's talking about a video about Sandra Birchmore that Turtle Boy did. And he said that he found that entire video offensive and vulgar, and it triggered feelings for him. And he asked Turtle Boy to take it down because it was offensive to him, her family, and others, meaning Sandra Birchmore. And he said he would not take it down. And at that point, this is when this podcast, or this episode anyway, Phelps's hatred and animosity toward Turtle Boy become like, he just can't hide it anymore. 44 minutes in or thereabouts, he plays a portion of Marcy's unprecedented statement that he made, that hostage video. He plays a portion of it. But other than playing a portion of that clip, he does not even talk about it at all and how inappropriate it was. Then he talks to some guy named John Jackson who was friends with John O'Keefe for a while. But then he asserts at some point that the whole blowout that Karen and John had was because Jen McCabe referenced 34 Fairview being close to a former flame of John O'Keefe. And he says that is what caused the huge blowout. And then he's got John Jackson, John O'Keefe's friend, opining as to her state of mind, Karen's state of mind and intoxication, and reversing into him. And then he actually says he says that Alan Jackson specifically called all these local small-time YouTubers. And he says, Alan Jackson specifically spoke with them personally. I know this for a fact. Creating a story that will become a conspiracy. That he held up photos of John O'Keefe's arm to influence the jury about dog bites and said, who believes defense attorneys when they even open their mouths? Before we get to the most recent episode 9, let's go to the chat. Thank you, Diane, for gifting 5 memberships. I think I thanked you, but I can't thank you enough. So thank you again. Jadzia, why have I never thought of this before? The taillight pieces would be on the road, not the grass, because physics. Thank you, Jadzia, for your super chat. Melanie says, he's blatantly lying. His earlier 2 podcasts in June, which he has since deleted, totally believe Karen and Turtle Boy. At what point did it shift? Strap hanger, thanks for becoming a new member. Meatball Morrissey, Sketty Stain. So this is the episode that set me off. Even the title, it sends LDE vibes. No, Duncan Good. This was sent at 2:27, so I'm not. Oh, this was sent at exactly 2:27. Ooh, that's crazy. I don't know what episode you were talking about. Jennifer, Phelps blocks anyone who criticizes his podcast. He also turned off comments. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just pointing out to you the inconsistencies that I'm finding in here between the testimony and the trial and the documents that we watch. Thank you very much for your super chat. Dewey, thanks for the 5. HIPAA, anyone? You know, being involved by your family in serious crimes can be traumatizing too, yeah? Just ducking around, became a member. Thanks, Dewey, for your super chat. The Ring story is on Turtle Boy Daily News, story 251. For those of you who would like to go look at it later, Latina is coming in here with the super chat to give you the citation. Thank you, Latina, for the citation and for your super chat. All we need to go over now is episode 9. Hang on a second. Melisa says Phelps has ruined any chance of being known as a credible podcaster. Oh, dear God, I'm sorry. He says, you renewed my rage over this case. Just boils over every week. Yeah, I encourage you to go back and listen to that JFK episode where Kate Peter calls in, because there's a lot of nuggets in there that she spills. And his conversation, he handled his conversation really well. In fact, his partner was like, at one point, I'm out of here. He's like, dude, I can't even listen to this. I'm gone. And he split. He was like, I can't take this. I can't believe you're giving her a platform. What are you doing? Episode 9. Let me see what stuck out to me in episode 9. They go on about the rolling rally. Oh, and he talks about how this kind of witness intimidation is unheard of in cases like this. And to that I say, have you followed any of the true crime cases where people are following, YouTubers specifically, are following family members around, accusing them of killing their own children? Have you seen any of those cases? It's not unheard of. Absolutely not unheard of at all. Carrie's in the chat. Which Carrie? Hi, Jerry. Hi, Jerry. Thanks for hanging out for 7 months. She may be in the chat. She knows what she said about me. Carrie Lama, help the McAlberts be the victims is playing in their cover up. You know the things that you've posted about me, Carrie Lama. I don't have time right now, or the energy, or the willingness to pull it up, but you've said a lot of really nasty things about me. A lot of really nasty things about me. And then when it became clear to me that you were besties with Jen McCabe, it all made sense. As are a lot of other those other people who are trashing me on the cesspool of Twitter, which I left because I don't have time for the drama. I don't have time for the drama. I don't. And so now they like to talk about how old I am and talk about my wrinkles. You know what? Every single one of these ducking wrinkles was earned, girl. Every single one of them. Every single one. Laughter, tears. I have 5 kids. I've been doing this for over 30 years. Do the math. Okay? Not hard to figure out how old I am, but you know what? I'm a lot older than you and a lot smarter than you and all your other minions who go out there on the cesspool of Twitter and trash people who simply talk about court documents and dox their families and their children. All the stuff that you think is so horrific that your people are doing to people like me. Think about that. Episode 9, he goes on to say that Karen Reed is calling all the shots behind the scenes. All of them. Calls him a self-published blogger a couple of times. Next week, he's going to have somebody on whose voice he disguised. So I'm not sure who that's going to be. I don't know how many episodes this is going to be. And he says at one point, Turtle Boy finds, for 60 days, he finds himself in his new home after he's arrested in front of his kid's bus stop. His new home, a jail cell. A jail cell. So there's that. Meatballs Marcy says, yeah, the dog did it episode, the JFK and James Jackson episode with Kate Peter was hysterical. Kate Peter saying James invited her. He thought she was nuts. Love you too. Love you too. Thank you, hot, not cupcakes. That has nothing to do with me. Apparently, this guy was named Cupcake as a child, and a guy or girl, I'm not sure, and does not like that name. So he's getting away from their own nickname, not Cupcakes. Gifted 10 memberships. Thank you so much. So kind of you. Oh, the dog did it episode, says Meatball. JFK, yes, was hysterical. Kate Peter kept saying that James invited her. He thought she was nuts. Yeah, he was mad. He was like, I can't even stick around for this episode. I'm gone. Just ducking around. Thanks for you, darling. Thanks for you, super sticker. Thoughts, concerns. What do you think? How we doing, chat? Is that James Jackson? Is that the James Jackson we just talking about? You. We're just talking about how you could not stand to listen to KP on your channel, and you were like, I am out of here. Why are you giving her a platform? Why are you even letting her speak? I'm done. And you split, and good for you. Yeah, women who bring down other women, especially because of age or weight, are worse than the worst misogynists. Yeah. Let's, since we're here, if you want to be petty, our friend, Auntie Deb, I don't know if you hear Jimmy, because Jimmy's getting upset, but here's some ridiculousness that was spewed out there in the cesspool. Let's take a look, shall we? What's her name? What's her name, Scott? Well, and if you haven't seen it, Auntie Deb's a little upset. Jimmy's getting upset at this one. I mean, these are just some of the latest things that she's posted about me and others. He calls her Jewel Carp. Karen Reed is several content creators who do not live in Massachusetts. T. The Glare, Brandy Churchwell, Las Vegas Cops, and Melanie Little. These people are all making money on John's death. I am not. I am interested in the truth and combating the lies being told as far as my physical appearance. Blah, 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 blah. Look at me. I'm so hot. Then she says, October 5th, replying to Mama Llama. Melanie Little is about as unbiased as Karen Reed. Well, here's the thing. That account doesn't exist anymore, so we can't even go back and look at the original tweet. Can't do it. Oh, well. Oh, there's more. Wait, we're not done. Wow. Bettero and Little are in this for me. Again, replying to Mama Llama, who's deleted her account. Bettero and Little are in this for the media attention only. Their goal is fame, should I say notoriety, and they'll say anything to get it. Imagine going to law school to chase clicks and views. Hold on. There's some better stuff than this. Let me just type this. Let's see. That's just Jewel Carp. That's the one that she's mad at. That Auntie Deb is mad at today. And on a rant. Oh, here's a good one. Here's a good one where they take a picture of me and put it side by side of a meme. Well, first of all, they ran my picture through some sort of I don't know, some sort of filter, and they're like, spot the difference? There isn't one. Oh, isn't that so cute? Isn't that so cute? Aren't they so clever? They're so clever. You know who's really clever? Oh my God, you know who's really clever? Is that mafia masshole? I mean, not mafia masshole. The that other guy, the guy, you know, that guy that does the, what the hell is his name? Feckless millennial. Wait, hold on. We got to find that stuff. Let's find that stuff because that's fun. The only thing that he does is make videos of people. I mean, they're so far down in the scroll that if you go look for them, you can't even find them anymore. There's some more pictures of me that doctored up, but that's not as fun as the videos. Okay, here's one. Here's a big hater. Here we go. This is the way they do it, right? But you know, what's his name doesn't want to report on this kind of stuff. What did I ever do except talk about my opinion? Here, this Shazlick, she loves to call me misinformation Melanie Little, apparently a lawyer, is downplaying serious witness intimidation charges. This grifting law tuber is a disgrace. What's under the duck? 65-year-old man. Shame, hashtag Karen Reed, and then like links my content. So thank you for linking my content because you're getting me more viewers. But then this is great. This, I don't know who this is. M Beach Lover, this person says April 20, Little needs to stop too. No common sense. Love this. Okay, here we go. Wolfgang Bodie on April 28th posts this. Attorney Melanie Little, misinformation Little, has complete meltdown about being called out for lying. She is the turtle boy of attorneys at this point, except Court TV isn't still inviting Turtle Boy on. Truth will set you free. Here, let's watch this again because she thinks this one's really good. Ready?
Did y'all see Melanie Little's meltdown the other day?
And feckless millennial, you're posting a little video about Melanie Little is a fraud and she's paid by the defense.
Yeah, I don't even want to give him the view either, but
Attorney Melanie Misinformation Little just needs to stop lying, and then we can stop calling her a fraud.
Lying?
If you're going to make those videos about somebody who has no job and doesn't really have anything to lose, you're probably better off.
Yeah.
Once you start attacking professional, successful people.
Didn't she get kicked off Court TV? It looks like she only has one review.
I actually did it myself.
And then they, they make me and like, I got kicked off Court TV. Last time I was invited to come on Court TV, it was with Wendy Murphy, so I declined. And then it was with Kevin Lenahan, so I declined. They call me all the time, dude. I don't know who the hell you are, but this is ridiculous. Okay, here we go. No, it gets better.
Yeah.
Give you the opportunity to get that shit off of Twitter like now. Now.
You're warning, right?
And I'm also going to ask you nicely
That's not
to
nice.
take down all the videos that you posted. You little millennials out there need a little soundbite for your little video that you're going to make, pull that one. But if you think being a civil litigator and your little videos that you're making over there is a dig, I've helped injured people and victims and survivors of the most horrific things rebuild their lives.
Yay!
Wow.
Okay?
I thought I got no views though.
Let's see. Are you ratioed? Let's see. And then he has like a whole channel about me. Whole channel. I mean, we can't even tell. Oh, yeah, 420 people saw this on November 25th.
Did y'all see Melanie Little's meltdown the other day?
And then Kim Fair went on to post a video about me. This woman gives herself way too much credit. She thinks she's smarter than she is, and God, is she pretentious. Melanie Little, please do not threaten me. First of all, they don't work on me. And second, as you well know, threats are against the law. Also, I'm currently putting together a montage of every time you have mentioned me on your little show. And then she does. Then she does. I don't care. They can have my airtime because it's better than you guys having to go find this stuff yourself, right? I'm just saying, if Mr. Phelps wants to talk about how these poor people are being so trash all over Twitter, they were there at 34 Fairview. I wasn't. And it goes on and on and on. Oh, yeah, then she posted like a whole entire video. Andy Dufresne. And then there's Oh, and then there's my personal favorite. But I don't want you to give her the view, but Feckless Millennial has an entire like whole series of videos about me. He really loves to make videos about me. He may have moved on to some other people, but maybe not. But this one goes all the way back to something like April. So this has been going on for a long time. So here's Masshole Mafia, not so confidential informant. Kate Peter wrote me a song. She wrote me a song, you guys. I mean, isn't that so nice? 7 months ago, she wrote me a song. This is when I first must have got on her radar.
She's live streaming at night. Her feelings are hurt. She'll put up a fight.
Wow.
Disinformation. She uses really obvious beauty filters to hide that she's really an 800-year-old vampiric creature.
It's not TikTok, babe. It's not TikTok. I don't know what kind of streaming platform you use, but it's called a good ring light with a diffuser. Maybe you should look it up because you're 20 years younger than I am, and yet you're hiding in the dark on your videos. So there's that.
She sustains herself on adrenochrome, harvested from impoverished orphan children. You know she's going to sue you if you make her feel sad.
Thank you.
If you offend her on Twitter, it's a federal crime, and that's bad. Oh, Melania, you're more than a little slow. You inserted yourself into a case and lie about things you really don't know.
I lie about things I really don't know, like the ducking police reports and the thing. This is what they do, okay? So for him to be so ducking one-sided, this was posted, I don't know, 7 months ago. It's got 3,700 views. She gives everyone the opportunity then to talk about it, what trash me, and oh, they're so funny. If I'd laughed any harder, it'd been the kind of situation. These are all people that have been sued multiple times for defamation and all kinds of things, which is kind of funny because, you know, that's who's out there. That's who's out there. Okay. So that's just a little taste of what people like me have been going through. And the reason that I show that to you is because it points out the inconsistencies in Phelps. Okay. It does. And it's disgusting. They love me long time. They love me long time. They do, you know, they do. So there's that. Exactly. Thanks for pointing that out, Dewey, because it would be so rude of me to point that out. Oh, they love you because they are not you, right? Haters gonna hate. I don't know what's wrong with these people, but I started covering this case and talking about this case and how I thought it was such an abomination and a ridiculous miscarriage of justice. January of 2024. Apparently, their little thing, their little posse was in the works for months before that. So I became an easy target once I came on the scene, right? Yes, it's crazy. So there's that. You know who they don't go after? People that have much larger followings like Emily Baker. They don't go after her. They thought they could shut me up, but they were ducking wrong about that, weren't they? They tried. There's worse than that. I mean, listen, if you're on the cesspool and you feel like reporting these things, please do. I mean, they're not going to take them down. It doesn't matter. I mean, it goes on and on and on. On and on and on and on to the point where it's revolting. But they need to be shared because people need to know what's going on out there in the cesspool of people. Thank you, JFK. KP's in violation of her probation. Let's talk probation surrenders. I know you talked about that. I just told everybody to go watch your show where she called in. And it was like, you had a great conversation with her. James was like, I'm out of here. I can't even believe it. He split. He turned off his camera. It was a fantastic watch. For those of you who haven't watched it, please go over there and watch it. Please. And that's why I'm so confused. Did Phelps close his eyes to what they do? He's no reporter, no crime analyst. He's outcome determinative, period. I mean, wasn't it reported that Michael Proctor's wife had called several people's jobs to have them fired? I mean, if you're going to report on it and you're going to report on the harassment, let's talk about the harassment on both sides, because I do not have the time, energy, or I really don't give a duck enough about these people to go after them and what they're doing to me. I don't. Not that it wouldn't be actionable, but when you call up somebody and get them fired from their job, and that person is like a witness's what? Like, you can't report on both sides of it. Oh, sweetie, no. Says, just so everyone's aware, Carrie Lama went to high school with Matt McCabe. That's her connection. They all have a personal connection. Of course. And they all have at least 10 or 15 other accounts. And if anybody has any sort of motivation, incentive, or plot here, maybe look at the other side, Phelps. Carpenter needs to step back, says Latina. That's really not her pick, you know? Us New Yorkers know how to find things out, trust me. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. It's not worth the hassle for you. Sarah, thanks for being a member for 3 months. Men in basement talking about children. Brian, Washington, the only one with children. Brian A. was the only one with children, not Higgins. So it was John O'Keefe down there talking about children too. That's a great point. Sarah, you might have cracked the case. What other men were there? Oh, Matt McCabe was there though, right? Matt and his kids. I want to check something. Hang on. Hold, please. Everyone hold. Talk amongst yourselves. Talk amongst yourselves, because now I remembered something that I pulled up a long, long time ago. I want to look at it. Somewhere in I have the floor plan of 34 Fairview. Let me just find that for you. All right. We've got it. By George, I think she's got it. One of these days, I'm going to learn how to work the internet. It's going to be amazing. Look at this. Here's the Zillow listing for 34 Fairview. Let's make it bigger. There's the basement. But what I'm interested in is the floor plan. Okay. So here's the first floor. Okay. Here's the first floor. Here's the front, what we're calling, can you see my cursor there? Don't smash your giant, big, expensive television and send me a bill. That's my cursor. There are two front doors, right? There's the main front door, which goes into the foyer, where Nicole Albert said everyone takes their shoes off when they come in the house. That's that door. And then there's this other door, which is on the front of the house. I guess you can't see my cursor now. I don't know why. Which is over here. That leads into this living room. Right? Where are the stairs to the basement? Okay. The stairs to the basement Well, here's the bulkhead, right? Are here. So if you come in the foyer, in the center door, and you come here, these are the stairs to the basement right here. If you came in the side door, you would have to walk through the living room, walk through the dining room, into the kitchen to get to the basement stairs. If you came in the front door, you would go straight to the basement stairs. You see? So that's just kind of interesting. Martin says John went in the main front door and up the stairs, then back down to the basement. Just leave this up here in case some of you want to do some sleuthing. So here's the main floor. You can easily find it on Zillow. Just search up 34 Fairview in Canton, and it's still up. This is when they put the listing on. And this is the second floor. But I don't see any other stairs other than this right here in the foyer. I don't see any other way to get down to the basement. If you guys know, let me know. Karen said he went in the main door, stuck his head in, and crossed the threshold. I think she said front door, and there are 2 front doors, so I just don't know. But what's weird is Nicole said that her and Brian came in this front door, into the foyer, and that's where they saw Colin. And I submit to you, if Allie was in the driveway waiting for him, why would he go out that door instead of going out the side door or this door on the side that goes into the living room? And then have to walk all the way around to especially if it's like snowing. I don't know. I never thought of it that way, but that is kind of funny. Thanks, murder. The only way down to the basement, excluding the bulkhead, would be that way, right? So what if he went to take a leak, right? What if he got out of the car, he walked up the driveway and he went out to take a leak, and then he went, like, is there a way into the backyard from the fence? Hang on. And look what that looks like around the pool, my friends. This is like a concrete patio, right? Like if you fell on that and smacked your head, that could be a situation. If, you went outside and the dog had been let out and you just went to take a leak back there and then maybe the dog jumped on you. I mean, it could have been like just an accident just could have happened. And then who knows? We don't know because we weren't there. But what I do know is that he was not hit by a car. I mean, that's just like basic injury knowledge. Looks like looking towards the back, and then there's like train tracks back here, I think. But I don't know if there's like an entrance. Well, let's see. If he came around like this way, what is that right there? Is that a gate into the backyard? It's hard to tell. Like if he came up the driveway, he'd be coming up this side, and maybe there was a gate in here and he just went to take a leak and then the dog was out there. Because Nicole did say they let the dog out right away when they got home. And it just goes by itself into the bathroom. It goes outside by itself. I don't know. Just spitballing over here with you. Just spitballing. So there's that. All right. Well, thank you all for hanging out with me for so long on a Sunday afternoon. It's been 3.5 hours. I didn't think we were going to go this long, but it did. Sometimes it just does. It just does. Right. Anne says, exactly my thought, Melanie. My first thought is, when drinking, where do I pee? Rainy Day says there was a gate directly behind where his body was found. Right. That was like, if you're standing in the backyard and looking at the house, it was to the right of the house, right? There are dogs in the back of the house. Who said he took a leak? Nobody said he took a leak because he can't tell us anything. He's not here. Spitballing, brainstorming. Latina says Boundless has no job. He was fired and lost his license. That massage he was giving, went too far. I don't know anything about that, Latina. Thank you for the 5. And that might explain some of the anger he has towards me and others. Thank you. On top of your super sticker. Keep Peters on unemployment. Working on the side making. I heard that she had a side gig. I don't know if this is true. So rumor, speculation. Working for Jennifer Coffendorfer. Editing Coffendorfer's videos for YouTube. Don't know. Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for your compliment. I appreciate you very much. Free Billy Tibbetts. Free Billy Tibbetts. Free my boy Billy Tibbetts. Thank you, Dawn. Just decking around. I'm so screwed with this case, although no change in my beliefs. So ridiculous. Yeah. There's a 2-week report on Proctor with the Walsh case. Yes, I'm going to cover that this week. I have some more documents on Walsh. I've been meaning to do it. Things have been breaking left and right. I'm very invested in Daniel Penny right now. And also the United Healthcare CEO that was gunned down, because both happen to be happening in my home state of New York. But don't worry, my friends, I have not forgotten about Massachusetts. And I have a lot of other documents on Walsh that I want to go over as well. So I kind of wanted to do it all at the same time because, we're not just on here for like 10 minutes at a time. We're on here for hours. Melissa says, I just looked it up because I remember listening to his podcast about his sister-in-law, and he and his brother were estranged from her when she was killed, and he has no children. He's full of it. Really? Because he said, like, in 2 different parts of that podcast that he adopted his brother's children when his sister-in-law was murdered and she was 9 months pregnant. He absolutely said it. Like, I'm not making that up. It's in there. I can find the timestamps for you if you want them. All right. Final thoughts, questions, comments, concerns. Then tell me if anybody's live now and you want to get teleported somewhere to do a cupcake invasion. If you guys didn't watch my show on Friday on the afternoon, it was the afternoon stream with Josh Ritter. It was really good while we were waiting for the Daniel Penny verdict, which still has not happened. It was really good. Thank you, Melissa Hamilton, for your super chat. Yeah. I don't know, Scott. Was it like a fake name, real name? That's cool. I mean, they're all watching, Scott. They're all watching. They're all watching. They all watch. And then it's funny because when they tweet all this ridiculous stuff and make up these videos about me, all they're doing is driving viewers to my channel. So there's that. Love the stream with Josh Ritter. Thank you. Thank you so much. People don't call their dog it. Nope. No, they don't. No, they sure don't. Isn't this what kindergarten boys do when they think you're cute, says Leah? So tell me, do you think that not only the Voss decision, but also this Phelps podcast could be helpful to the defense? What do you think? Based on all the things we talked about today, and do you have any other thoughts about other ways that they could be potentially helpful to the defense? There's a picture of the foyer on Trulia. It looks like there's a door across from the stairs to go upstairs inside. I thought that was like a coat closet. I saw that too, Sophia, and I thought it was a coat closet. Coat closet. Oh, thanks. You love Josh and I together. Thank you so much. In fact, they've been asking me to do one of those, those courtroom confidential, whatever the interviews that they've been doing with other like law tubers is. And I've been like hesitant to do it. And I told them, I said, listen, you don't understand how these people that are against Karen Reed, like these trolls, like how vicious they are. Like I'm hesitant to come on and do any interview that has anything to do about myself after what's been done to me and my children. And I didn't even show you guys that part of it. Just showed you guys some stuff that they thought was funny. So it's I've been talking to them about it, and I'm like, yeah, I really don't want to talk about myself. Like, it's a shame when you have to like not share anything about yourself with your viewers because, they'll glom onto it and then they'll like be sitting outside your house probably. Trooper Paul's Pirouette says, I highly recommend Crime Weekly. They're currently doing a series on this case. Awesome. Rainy Day says Diana Ferris was Phelps' sister-in-law. Her kids were living with an aunt in another state when she was murdered. Oh. Thank you, not cupcakes, for thanking me. What's happening with your Patriots right now? Does anybody know? I'm afraid to ask. Heather said, like I said earlier, I'm nobody, and they've come after myself and my son. Right. And Marcella says, yeah, that's sad, but you got to protect yourself and your children because people are crazy. Yeah, I mean, I came into the YouTube thing about a year and a half ago. It seems like an hour. It's 3.5 hours ago today, but a year and a half ago, having like no clue that there were people like this that would do stuff like this. I was blown away by it. Like, you just don't think, oh, the Patriots aren't playing today. Okay, good. Scott, what happened with the Jets? Should I not ask? All right. All right. So we're in agreement here. Yes, if they can get their interviews and find out who gave them the information about being downstairs, that's huge. Yep. Delene says, Phelps, darling, the book would say, what the F is going on? My love has been murdered and people are trying to blame me. Yeah. Hi, Kelly. Thanks for the 5. I don't know what it means, but the McAlberts went out of their way to talk about Higgie's Jeep plow. Must be involved somehow. Love you. Ignore the trash bags. I don't know why they did that. I don't know why that was brought up so much at trial and then never really they never really closed the loop on that. Right? About him parking in front of the mailbox and stuff. Like, the loop was never really closed. I don't know what it means either. I'm curious. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thoughtfully and kindly. And there's that. I don't know anybody who's live right now to send you to, so can't see it. Can't see where I should send you. But in any event, thank you for coming to hang out with me today. That was really fun, wasn't it? It was a good way to spend 3.5 hours. And to my my moderators, thank you for hanging in there today on a Sunday and making this a good place for people to want to hang out. I'm getting rid of all of the vitriol and hatred, and I'm sure there's gonna be more. So, there's always that to look forward to. Please smash the like button on your way out, and even if you're hate watching, smash the dislike button. Who cares? It's like engagement, right? And be nice to each other. Do all the things that YouTube likes, and please subscribe. It's free. It's free, and hit the bell. Make sure you're notified when I go live, because oftentimes it is on just like 5 minutes in advance notice. We'll be here tomorrow on Verdict Watch for Daniel Penny. I'm not sure what time yet, but I can't wait to see what happens on that. I'm fully invested. And, just like stay cool, stay kind, stay classy, be nice to each other, and like rise above these idiots who just want to tear you down, you and me both. Peace out, my friends. I'll see you tomorrow. And until then, stay safe out there. Good night.